There is a land called Oo, and on the surface it looks like a dream. Rolling candy hills, kingdoms made of bubblegum and ice, talking dogs and stretchy magic, and a boy with a white hat who swings a sword at whatever needs swinging at. It looks colorful and warm and a little weird and mostly safe. It looks like a cartoon built for Saturday mornings, something gentle to fill the space between cereal and the rest of the day. But underneath that surface, underneath every cheerful color and bouncy musical number and goofy adventure, there is something else entirely. A world built on ruin. A mythology thousands of years deep. A cast of characters carrying grief and guilt and memory that spans centuries, wrapped in the bodies of candy people and ice wizards and half-demon vampire queens. Adventure Time is one of the most quietly devastating pieces of storytelling ever produced for an animated medium. And most of it happens in the margins, in the details, in what the show does not say out loud but shows you in the background of a frame, in a song that sounds playful until you parse the lyrics, in a flashback that only makes sense if you have been paying very close attention for several seasons. Tonight we are going to go deep. We are going to pull back every layer, follow every thread, trace every secret the show left for people who were paying attention. We are going to talk about a nuclear apocalypse that happened roughly 1,000 years before Finn ever picked up a sword. We are going to talk about a being older than the universe who arrived on Earth inside a comet 65 million years ago. We are going to talk about a man who lost his mind one piece at a time trying to protect a little girl who was not even his daughter. We are going to talk about that little girl, now 1,000 years old, still carrying every loss like she carries her bass guitar like it is part of her body, like she would not know who she was without the weight of it. We are going to talk about a kingdom made of candy that began in loneliness and almost ended in civil war. We are going to talk about a boy who has been living the same heroic story across multiple lifetimes without knowing it. We are going to talk about a dog whose blood carries alien DNA from a shape-shifting creature from another dimension. And we are going to talk about the ancient chaos god who was always lurking at the edges of everything, the force that everything else in the show was quietly circling. So, settle in, get comfortable, let the world outside go quiet for a while, because we are going to visit Oo, the way Oo deserves to be visited slowly, carefully, with all the time in the world to let it breathe. This is the secret lore of Adventure Time. After that first section, drop a comment down below and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. I want to know. And if you have not subscribed yet, now would be a perfect time. More of this kind of deep, slow storytelling is coming, and you will want to be here for it. Part 1. The World Before Oo the Mushroom War. Before there was a land of Oo, there was Earth. Not the Earth of Finn and Jake, not the mutated post-apocalyptic landscape of candy kingdoms and ice empires, but the Earth we would recognize. Cities, highways, electricity, people with 5 fingers who watched television and argued about politics and went to work in the morning and came home in the evening and had no idea what was coming. The show never names the war cleanly. It calls it the Great Mushroom War, and that name tells you almost everything you need to know. Mushroom is what a nuclear detonation looks like from a distance, that enormous, terrible cloud rising into the sky like something organic, like the Earth itself exhaling something poisonous. The war was nuclear. The war was global. And by the time it ended, the world that had produced it was gone. We pieced together what happened from fragments scattered across 100 episodes. A Christmas special in Season 3 drops us into a home video recording shaky VHS footage of a man named Simon Petrikov sitting in front of a camera, trying to document his deteriorating mind before the mind is entirely gone. Through the window behind him, the sky is wrong. Something is happening in that sky. Military aircraft are crossing it. This is a man filming himself in the last hours before the end of civilization, and he is more worried about what is happening inside his own head than outside his window. That detail alone is heartbreaking. In Season 5, an episode called Simon and Marcy takes place 996 years before the events of the main series. Simon and a young Marceline, she is maybe 8 or 9 years old in this flashback, are navigating a ruined city. The streets are broken. The buildings are hollow. Strange green-tinged creatures prowl the shadows, mutated things that might have once been people, now reshaped by something in the fallout. Simon keeps Marceline close and keeps his spirits deliberately high, singing the theme from a television show called Cheers to remind himself of who he used to be. The city around them is recognizable as a city recognizable, specifically as a mid-20th to early 21st century North American city based on the architecture and the remnants of signage. This is the aftermath of a war that happened close enough to our own time that Simon still remembers what a television sitcom sounds like. The mechanics of the war are never explained in full, and show creator Pendleton Ward has been open about the fact that a children's cartoon cannot depict the specifics of nuclear conflict. But the evidence that remains is enough to sketch the shape of what happened. There was a global exchange of nuclear weapons. At some point, a specific device, not a standard nuclear warhead, but something stranger, something loaded with mutagenic compounds, was detonated somewhere in what had been North America. This was the mushroom bomb. And when it went off, it did not just kill and destroy, it transformed. The mutagenic compound in the mushroom bomb was not a natural consequence of nuclear physics. There is something else in it, something that interacts with living matter and with the fabric of reality in ways that conventional weapons science cannot account for. The bomb's explosion is depicted in the show as a vast green mushroom cloud, not the orange-red of a conventional detonation, and the material it releases into the environment does not behave like radiation alone. It causes mutation on a scale and of a kind that changes the rules. Inanimate matter begins to organize into something that thinks. Candy comes to life. Slime becomes sentient. Objects gain personality. The rules of biology and physics are quietly, permanently rewritten in the aftermath of that single detonation. What the bomb also does, and this is crucial, is awaken something that had been waiting. The Lich, whose full story we will spend an entire section on, was not created by the mushroom bomb so much as the bomb created the conditions for the Lich to manifest in the physical world. The Lich's soul arrived on Earth 65 million years ago inside a comet. The spirit was there the whole time, waiting, dormant in whatever form cosmic evil takes when it has no suitable vessel. The mutagenic compound provided that vessel. The bomb went off, and something crawled out of the fallout. But before we get there, let us sit with the human cost for a moment, because the show is very careful, in its fragmented way, to make sure we understand that this was not a distant mythological event. It was a catastrophe that happened to people. Marceline's mother Elise is shown in flashback. She and young Marceline are traveling through the wasteland after the war. Elise is sick almost certainly from radiation exposure, her body failing in the way bodies fail when they absorb too much of what the war left behind. She is trying to get Marceline to a fallout shelter, somewhere safe. She does not make it. She sends Marceline ahead because she does not want her daughter to watch her die. And Marceline arrives at the shelter to find it already full of the dead, the doors open, the bones of people who made it there but did not survive what came after. This is what the Mushroom War did to specific people. Not to armies, not to governments, but to a mother and her half-demon daughter trying to find a door that would keep them safe. And it is this level of specificity, the personal, intimate grief woven into the catastrophe that makes Adventure Time's mythology feel real in a way that a lot of grand-scale post-apocalyptic fiction does not. The war did not just end civilization. It ended countless individual stories. The ones we see fragments of are just the ones the show chose to track. The physical consequences of the war are also stunning in scope. A massive section of Earth's northern hemisphere is simply gone, blown away. When the show depicts Earth from space, there is a colossal crater visible, a chunk of the planet missing that in real terms would be geologically incomprehensible, would shift the planet's rotation and alter every climate system on the surface. The show does not try to explain exactly how this happened. The implication is that the combination of nuclear weapons and something stranger, the mushroom bomb's unique properties, or possibly an interaction with the cosmic energy of the Lich's awakening, produced a detonation event so large it physically removed part of the planet. In the 1,000 years following the war, the world rewrites itself. The mutagenic fallout does not kill everything it touches, it changes things. Candy that had been scattered in the wreckage of grocery stores and destroyed confectionery factories does not decay. It gains consciousness. Slowly, over generations, the candy congeals into something organized. Ooh grows out of devastation, the way forests grow out of volcanic ash. Not the same as what was there before, but startlingly, insistently alive. The human population does not recover in any meaningful sense. There are a few scattered tribes, small groups that retreated to isolated places and survived. By the time of the main story, 1,000 years after the war, Finn is explicitly described as the last human boy in the land of Oo. Not the last human being anywhere. The show later reveals pockets of humanity elsewhere on the planet, but the last in this particular region of a world that has become something else. This is the ground the whole story grows from. Not a fantasy world built in some distant magical dimension, but our world in a possible future, after we finished ourselves off and something stranger and older and more interesting grew in our place. Adventure Time takes place on the ruins of human civilization and builds something genuinely beautiful out of that wreckage. That is not an accident. That is a choice, made deliberately and maintained consistently across 10 seasons, because the show wants you to feel the weight of the past even as you watch the present. When Finn swings his sword through the grasslands around the Candy Kingdom, he is swinging it through what was once a highway interchange, or a suburb, or a farmer's field. When the Ice Kingdom glitters at the top of its frozen mountain, it is sitting on top of whatever buildings and roads and memories were already there when Simon Petrikov wandered north 1,000 years ago and let the cold take him. Oo is a palimpsest new writing on top of old writing, the old text not quite erased, showing through if you know how to look. And knowing how to look is the whole game with Adventure Time. The rewards are not in the surface story. They are in what the surface story is built on top of. The Mushroom War was the beginning of everything, and it was the end of a world we used to know. Part 2. The Lich, a force older than everything. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine not a villain. Not an antagonist with motivation and backstory, and something they want beyond pure destruction. Imagine instead a force, a principle, an alignment of the universe toward a specific end. Imagine something that existed before the concept of evil was invented, something that preceded the moral frameworks humans built to describe it, something that looked at the first spark of biological complexity, at the first cell dividing in primordial water, and experienced that event as an offense. That is the Lich. The show takes care to make this clear in the 6th season, in an episode called The Comet, when Finn finally encounters the most recent incarnation of the Catalyst Comet, a purple being of tremendous ancient intelligence that tells him, simply, it has embodied all that is good and all that is evil across its many cycles. The comet is the vehicle. It arrives on Earth every 1,000 years or so, bringing an agent of change. And one of those comets, arriving roughly 65 million years ago, carried something specific, something that exists in opposition to life itself. The Lich's soul arrived on Earth when the dinosaurs still ruled. Before humans, before primates. Before most of the complex multicellular life that would eventually produce the civilization that would eventually destroy itself in a nuclear war that would eventually create the conditions for the Lich to put on a physical body and begin its work in earnest. That is how long this thing has been waiting. The timescale is hard to hold in your mind because it is the same timescale that geology runs on. The same span of time that produced the Rocky Mountains and the Grand Canyon and every ocean current that has ever existed. The Lich has one goal, not a complicated goal, not a goal that has been modified by experience or shaped by desire or complicated by relationship. One clean, absolute goal, the extinction of all life. 5 words that contain a complete philosophy. Everything living should stop, every cell that divides, every creature that breathes, every conscious mind that reaches toward anything beyond pure entropy, all of it should end. The Lich does not want to rule over life. It does not want to harness life. It wants the absence of life. It wants the silence that preceded the first organism and will follow the last. This is different from a villain who wants power or revenge or love twisted wrong. Those villains are comprehensible. They have something in common with us. The Lich has nothing in common with us because the Lich is not of us. It arrived from outside the context of life entirely and has spent tens of millions of years observing life with the expression of someone watching an ant infestation. When the mushroom bomb went off 1,000 years before Finn's story begins, the mutagenic compound in the detonation provided the Lich with something it had needed, a vessel of sufficient corruption to house a cosmic force. The explosion's fallout does not create the Lich from nothing. It gives the already present essence of the Lich a physical form, a body made of the war's worst consequence. And that body climbs out of the green, glowing wreckage and begins. The Lich's physical appearance in that original body is deliberate and effective in the way the best monster design always is. It is skeletal, the visible structure of death walking around inside what was once flesh. Its eyes glow green with the same color as the mutagenic waste that birthed it. It commands dead things, animates them, uses them as extensions of its will. Its voice, when it speaks, sounds like something that learned human language the way a geologist learns about people by studying their fossils, with perfect understanding and zero warmth. The Lich's power is death magic in its most fundamental sense. It can kill with a touch. It can rot and decay anything it focuses on. It can possess living beings, sliding into them through their eyes or mouth and wearing them from the inside like a suit. This possession ability is one of the show's recurring horrors, the idea that a body is not just yours, that something else can occupy it and use it against the things you love, while the real you watches from somewhere inside, unable to stop it. The show's heroes encounter the Lich several times across the series, and each encounter reveals something new about its nature. In the early seasons, it is a straightforward apocalyptic threat, the thing that must be stopped before it undoes everything. The great hero Billy trapped it in amber inside the Candy Kingdom's ancient tree. The amber held for a long time. It was the snail the Lich possessed a small, innocuous background character who appears, waving, in virtually every episode of the show's early seasons that finally freed it. The waving snail, in every episode, waving cheerfully, while the Lich waited inside its small, patient body for the right moment. That detail is genuinely unsettling if you go back and look at it with context. The Lich spent in-universe years, the full run of early Adventure Time, inhabiting a snail that appears in background shots, waving. It was there the whole time, in the background. Patient, waiting. When it finally acts in earnest, it kills Billy, one of the greatest heroes the land of Ooh has ever produced, and wears his skin. Uses Billy's face and Billy's voice to manipulate Finn and Jake into helping it reach the Enchiridion, a magical book whose gems, properly assembled, can open a portal to the time room where Prismo lives and grant a wish. The Lich's wish is simple: extinction of all life. It states this flatly, without theatrics. It does not explain why. It does not offer a rationale. It states it the way you would state a preference for a particular kind of food. It is just what the Lich wants. What the show does with the Lich across its run is remarkable because it never cheapens it. The Lich is contained, defeated, apparently destroyed multiple times, and each time, what returns is not diminished. The body changes, the vessel is lost, the situation shifts. But the underlying force, the pure anti-life principle that the Lich represents, never disappears because it cannot. You cannot destroy the idea that life might not be necessary. You can only push it back. In Season 5, Finn and the Lich both end up in the Crystal Citadel, a prison outside normal space-time where the universe's greatest criminals are contained in crystal. The Lich is there because it was sent there after its defeat at the end of Season 4. A character called the Citadel Guardian is there too, an ancient, benevolent entity of life and healing whose blood can cure anything, including, apparently, the Lich. When the Citadel is damaged and the Guardian's blood splashes across the Lich, something extraordinary happens. The cosmic force of pure death, immersed in cosmic healing, produces a baby, a giant, green, gentle baby who looks at the world with enormous wondering eyes and has no memories of what it was. The Lich becomes Sweet Pea. Sweet Pea is raised by tree trunks and Mr. Pig. He goes to school. He makes friends. He is kind and curious and loves his parents and does not hurt anything. The engine of cosmic extinction is now a large, gentle child eating cereal in the morning, but the Lich is still there. Under the surface, the show makes this explicit in moments of extreme threat to Sweet Pea. Something rises up from behind his eyes that is recognizably the Lich, the voice deeper and older and colder, threatening violence against whoever dares. The Lich implies something terrifying in one of these moments, that it is older than existence itself, that it survived a time before there was anything, that the universe emerging from nothing was, to the Lich, an inconvenience, something that interrupted a silence it preferred. Whether this is literally true or the boast of a creature that experiences itself as primordial, the show never fully adjudicates. But the Lich's connection to Golb, the chaos entity at the show's cosmological apex, suggests that the Lich is not simply a product of the Mushroom War. It is something much older that the Mushroom War merely gave a local habitation. The Lich refers to itself in whispers as the ceaseless wheel, the last scholar of Golb. It is, in other words, a servant, or a fragment, or a philosophy made flesh, the physical embodiment of what Golb's chaos, applied specifically to living things, looks like. Sweet Pea, 1,000 years after the events of the main series, is shown grown to enormous size, wandering the landscape of a changed Ooh. The Lich has not returned. Sweet Pea, who chose kindness, who absorbed 1,000 years of gentle parenting and small joys and ordinary existence, seems to have held. The monster that wanted to end everything is now a person who loves the world enough to walk through it carefully, making sure not to step on things. That is Adventure Time's most quietly radical statement about the nature of evil. The show does not defeat the Lich through force, exactly. It transforms it. It deposits the engine of destruction into a context of love and time and ordinary life and watches what happens. And what happens, slowly, over a very long time, is that the Lich stops being the Lich. Whether that constitutes a victory depends on your philosophy. But it is a more interesting resolution than simply destroying the villain. It is the show asking, sincerely, what would happen if the thing that wants to end everything was given, instead, something worth protecting? Part 3. Simon Petrikov, the man who sacrificed his mind. There is a videotape. We first see it in a Christmas episode in Season 3. Played for comedy, the Ice King has hidden videotapes in his dungeon, and Finn and Jake watch them to find the password to his security system. The first tapes are embarrassing and goofy, the Ice King dancing in his underwear, the Ice King doing impressions, the Ice King looking slightly less insane than usual, and then they find the last tape. And everything changes. A man sits in front of a camera. He is young, or youngish, maybe in his late 30s. He wears thick glasses, he has dark skin and warm eyes, and the posture of someone very intelligent who has spent a lot of time apologizing for it. His name is Simon Petrikov, and he is an antiquarian, which means he studies old things and their histories for a living. He is clearly frightened. He is also clearly trying to stay calm, for the camera, for whoever might one day watch this. He tells the camera about a crown he bought from a dock worker in Scandinavia. He thought it was interesting. He showed it to Betty, his fiancée, whom he calls his princess with a gentle, embarrassed warmth that suggests he has called her that for years and never gotten tired of it. He put the crown on his head as a joke, and then he did something terrible that he cannot remember. The crown made him do it. He blacked out, and when he came back, Betty was gone and the crown was on the floor, and he has not been entirely himself since. He describes the visions the crown sends him. He describes the voices. He is losing time. He is losing himself, bit by bit, and he is aware of the losing even as it happens, which is the cruelest version of this kind of dissolution. He is watching from inside as everything that makes him Simon Petrikov, the curiosity, the warmth, the intelligence, the love gets scraped away and replaced with something else. Something colder and bluer and wilder, and without the capacity for the specific kind of sadness that comes from knowing what you used to be. He tells the camera he is documenting this so someone will know. So the record exists. So whoever finds these tapes will understand that there was a person here before there was a monster. Adventure Time plants this moment in a Christmas episode and then lets it sit there in the audience's chest for the rest of the series. It rewrites the Ice King retroactively. Everything we have seen of the Ice King, every ridiculous kidnapping attempt, every lonely song, every moment of buffoonish villainy gets processed through a new filter. This is not an evil person. This is a good person who no longer has access to the parts of himself that made him good, but who still carries the shape of them, still reaching toward warmth in the only ways the crown leaves him capable of. Simon bought the crown from a dock worker in northern Scandinavia. The crown's origins go back much further than the dock worker. It was built in the distant past of Ooh's mythological prehistory, created by a scientist wizard named Evergreen, who lived in the age of the dinosaurs. Evergreen built the crown to grant a wish that would save the world from an incoming comet. He programmed it with a specific wish, his wish, but the crown only grants the deepest wish of whoever wears it. And Evergreen's student, who put it on first in a catastrophic moment, did not share Evergreen's wish. The crown has been floating through history ever since, carrying its enormous and corrupting power, ending up in the hands of a Scandinavian dockworker who sold it to a curious antiquarian who thought it would impress his fiancée. Betty saw what the crown did to Simon and ran. This is not a moral failing, it is a human response to watching someone you love do something inexplicable and frightening while wearing a piece of jewelry. Betty runs, and Simon is left alone with the crown and the voices and the slow erosion of his identity. Then the mushroom war happens. The crown, whatever it is doing to Simon's mind, is also making him powerful. The ice magic it channels is real and immense, and keeps him alive through conditions that should kill a normal person. Simon walks through the devastation of a world-ending nuclear exchange, and survives because the crown will not let him die. This is its particular cruelty. The very thing destroying him is the only thing keeping him alive. Remove the crown and Simon's body, sustained by magic for 1,000 years beyond its natural span, would begin to fail immediately. He wanders the ruins of civilization with the crown slowly eating his memories, and he finds a little girl in the wreckage. She is sitting in the debris of a destroyed city, alone, crying. She is perhaps 8 or 9 years old. She has black hair and large eyes, and she does not look fully human because she is not fully human. Her father is the demon lord of the Nightosphere, but she is very much a child, and she is alone in the middle of the end of the world. Simon gives her a stuffed toy he finds in the wreckage of a demolished toy shop. She keeps that toy Hambo. She names it for centuries. Simon and Marcelin travel together through the ruins, and for a while they are something like a family. The episode Simon and Marcy shows us the texture of this relationship. Simon singing cheers to hold himself together, translating his own disintegration into something that sounds like optimism, because that is what the child needs from him. Making her soup from a vending machine's supply by arguing with the machine in a voice she needs to believe is her father's. Teaching her that things can be okay even when they are very much not okay. Simon knows what is happening to him. He is aware, with increasing difficulty, that each time he uses the crown, each time he draws on its power to protect Marceline from the mutant things prowling the ruins, a little more of him is lost. The magic takes a tithe of consciousness every time. He documents this in letters he writes to Marceline, that she will find later, in the episode, I Remember You, letters he was already leaving for a future in which he would not know her anymore. He writes, My mind is changing. I can feel it. And I'm afraid I won't remember why I was afraid in the first place. He writes, I hope someday you'll forgive me for what I am. I hope you'll be happy even though I can't be there to see it. He leaves Marceline when he feels the boundary approaching the point past which the man who would hurt her rather than let her go is more present than the man who loves her. He walks away from the one relationship that has been keeping him human, because being human has become dangerous for her. He makes the most Simon Petrikov choice possible. He accepts a terrible outcome for himself to prevent a worse one for someone he loves. And then he becomes the Ice King. The Ice King is not Simon Petrikov. Not exactly. He is what remains when the crown has finished its work. His skin is blue. His nose is enormous. He cannot stay warm. His body temperature has dropped far below what any living human being could survive, held at that impossible low by the crown's continuing intervention. He is eccentric in ways that have lost the warmth that once made eccentricity charming. He kidnaps princesses not from malice but from an ache, a hollow, formless ache that he cannot name or understand, left by the absence of everything the crown took, and the word princess is the echo of Betty, his fiancée, whom he called his princess for years and can no longer remember. The show is careful to let the Ice King be funny. He is genuinely funny, ridiculous, and petulant and dramatic in ways that generate real comedy, but it never lets you forget what the comedy is built on top of. There is a version of the Ice King that you can watch and laugh at, and there is another version of him that you have to watch from the inside of Holly Jolly Secrets Part 2, from the inside of I Remember You, from the inside of the episode where he is briefly restored to Simon for a few minutes and has to face what he has become, and what he lost. That version of him is almost unbearable to watch because it is exactly as devastating as the setup promises. In the series finale, Simon is finally freed from the crown when he, Betty, and Finn are swallowed by Golb, and the cosmic entity's digestive process strips everything away to its essential nature. The crown reverts to its primal form. Simon reverts to himself. He comes back in Golb's stomach as Simon Petrikov again, older, softer, still wearing the glasses, still recognizably the man from the videotapes. And Betty is there with him. Their reunion is brief. Betty, who has spent years pursuing increasingly desperate magical solutions to free Simon, who has warped herself in the pursuit of restoring him, makes a final decision inside Golb's stomach. She uses the restored crown in its primal wish-granting form and makes a wish, her deepest wish, to keep Simon safe. The crown grants it the only way it can. It merges Betty with Golb, and the merged being departs through a portal in the sky, taking the crown with it. Simon walks out of the finale as a free man. He moves in with Marceline. He teaches history of magical artifacts at a wizard academy. He sends letters to Fiona in the multiverse, filling her in on how he is doing. He is doing, by all evidence, better than he has in 1,000 years. He is free, he is loved, he knows who he is, he has Marceline. Betty gave him all of that. Betty, who ran when he first put on the crown, who came back from 1,000 years in the past specifically to save him, who warped her own mind and personality in the pursuit of saving his. Betty, who got to see him restored for exactly long enough to know the sacrifice was worth it, and then sacrificed herself to lock that restoration in place. Simon Petrikov is the most quietly tragic figure in a show full of tragic figures, because his tragedy is the one most recognizable from our own world. The loss of self to forces we cannot control. The slow theft of personality and memory. The people who love us watching it happen and unable to stop it. Adventure Time wraps this in ice magic and wizard hats. But the core of it is an experience that people with aging relatives, or with mental illness, or with addiction, recognize with a precision that can take your breath away if you are not expecting it. The show does not give Simon a perfect ending. Betty is gone. He will have to live the rest of his life knowing what she gave up to give him his. But it gives him the ability to live, to be present, to be himself, and in the context of what he endured, that is enormous. Part 4. Marceline, 1,000 Years of Loneliness. Marceline Abadir is 1,000 and some years old. That number deserves to just sit for a moment, because 1,000 years is not comprehensible in the way human lifespans are comprehensible. We have trouble imagining what we will be doing next year. Imagining a consciousness that has accumulated 1,000 years of experience, 1,000 years of people it has known and lost, places it has lived and left, relationships it has built and watched collapse or simply outlasted, is something else entirely. Something that strains the mind the way deep space distances strain it. The number is technically accessible but emotionally immense. Marceline starts, as we have already seen, in the wreckage of the Mushroom War. A child, half human, half demon. Her mother Elise died in the aftermath of the war from what was almost certainly radiation sickness, trying to get her daughter to a shelter that turned out to hold only the bodies of people who had died trying to reach it. Her father Hunson Abadir, the lord of evil and ruler of the Nightosphere, a hellish dimension sustained by chaos and soul consumption, was elsewhere during the war. In the Nightosphere, presumably, or simply somewhere that the mushroom bomb's fallout could not reach. Hunson Abadir is a complicated figure, even for a demon lord. He is full of what he himself describes as chaotic evil. He consumes souls. He rules the Nightosphere through something like absolute authority over its native demonic population. He is not a caring father by any conventional definition. He is not warm, or attentive, or present. He eats Marceline's French fries. This is the incident, depicted in a memory that Finn accidentally witnesses in the episode Memory of a Memory, that crystallizes the central wound in their relationship. They are in the ruins of a diner after the war, this tiny, fragile moment of ordinary comfort in the middle of devastation, and Hunson takes her food, the food she made for herself. The small comfort in a world stripped of everything. He eats it without asking, without thinking, because that is what he does. Because her existence as a specific person with specific needs does not fully register against the vast, ancient, consuming nature of what he is. Marceline writes a song about it. She calls it the Fry Song. It is a blues song. She sings it to her father in the episode It Came from the Nightosphere. And the audience laughs at the specificity. Your dad ate your fries and you wrote a blues song about it? Until the context becomes clear, and the song is suddenly about something much larger than French fries. It is about every time a parent's carelessness left a mark. about every time you needed someone who was constitutionally incapable of being what you needed, about the grief of loving someone who will never be able to love you back in the specific way you require. After Simon leaves, after the crown takes the last of him and the Ice King wanders north, Marceline is alone again. She tries to reconnect with her father and finds him exactly as he has always been, himself, complete and self-contained and fundamentally uninterested in modifying himself for her. She severs the relationship. She does this multiple times across her life, and they keep finding their way back to an uncomfortable proximity that resembles family because it is family, regardless of how dysfunctional. In the centuries following the war, Marceline roams the recovering land of U. She is not fully human and not fully demon, and not any of the things the land of U produces from its own altered biology. She is a survivor of the old world, a child of the apocalypse, carrying memories that predate most of the kingdoms and creatures around her. She falls in with humans for a while, the last remaining tribes, small groups trying to rebuild some version of civilization in the New World. Among them, she begins to realize something useful. Vampires have reappeared in U, presumably as a consequence of the same mutagenic forces that produced everything else, and they are dangerous. They are preying on the human communities she has come to care about. Marceline's demonic heritage gives her something specific, the ability to absorb the soul and power of anything she destroys. When she kills a vampire, she gets something. The first gives her levitation. She keeps hunting, the acid spit of one, the mist transformation of another, the hypnosis, the shape-shifting, the healing factor. Each vampire she destroys contributes an ability to what she is becoming. She is assembling herself, power by power, from the bodies of things she kills. And then she meets the Vampire King. He is ancient, more powerful than anything she has faced, and he wants her specifically, in whatever way a Vampire King wants a thing. Their fight ends in what looks like a victory for Marceline, and turns out to be something else, a victory and a defeat simultaneously. She kills him. She also gets bitten. The bite takes, in the way vampire bites take when the bitten has the right biology for it. Marceline, who had been killing vampires and absorbing their powers without becoming one herself, is now a vampire. She has all the abilities she accumulated and one additional, permanent consequence: vulnerability to sunlight, the need for the color red, the immortality. She adapts. She is good at adapting. She has had to be. She builds a life inside her new nature, the bass guitar, the music, the long stretches of wandering punctuated by the occasional relationship that she inevitably outlives. The relationship with Ash, a magician who turned out to be cruel in the specific way charming people are sometimes cruel, selling her most precious object, Hambo, to a witch as payment for a favor he wanted. The friendship and eventual relationship with Bonnibel Bubblegum, the ruler of the Candy Kingdom, who began as a complicated kind of peer, the only other being around who came close to her age and sophistication and developed into something warmer and harder to define. The Bubblegum and Marceline relationship is treated in the show with real care and also with real opacity, which reflects how the show navigated the constraints of its original audience and broadcast context while still telling the truth it wanted to tell. They clearly have history. Deep, complicated, specific history. The kind that involves knowing exactly how someone takes their tea and exactly how to make them angrier than they have ever been, and exactly what to say when they are quiet in a particular way. Their falling out, depicted across flashbacks in the special Obsidian, happened because of a disagreement about how to handle a threat. A disagreement that was actually about something larger, about control and trust, and whether Bubblegum's instinct to manage situations extended to managing the people around her. Marceline left because being in proximity to someone who sometimes made her feel like a problem to be solved was not something she could sustain indefinitely. They spend decades not speaking. Then Adventure Time happens, Finn and Jake, and the whole animated circus and proximity and crisis and the specific gravity of people who have never stopped caring about each other do what they always do. The miniseries Stakes from Season 7 gives Marceline an entire arc about her vampiric nature. She asks Bubblegum to extract the vampire essence from her body to give her back the mortality she might have had. Bubblegum does it. And then the vampires she absorbed come back, the essences she took from them over the centuries, freed, seeking bodies. Marceline has to fight them again, one by one, to reclaim what she gave up. The final confrontation is with the piece of the vampire king she still carries inside her, the oldest and deepest of the essences. And in the moment of that confrontation, she makes a choice. She reclaims her vampiric nature willingly, not because it is thrust upon her, but because it is hers. Because the 1,000 years she has spent as what she is have made her what she is, and she is not interested in trading that identity away, mortality or no mortality. This is one of the show's most sophisticated character beats. Marceline does not get fixed. She does not get cured or redeemed through the loss of the thing that makes her different. She makes peace with the thing that makes her different by choosing it, consciously, as an adult with full information. She is a vampire. She is a half-demon. She has 1,000 years of accumulated experience and loss and triumph and music. She is not these things despite herself. She is herself, made of all of them. In the end of the series and across distant lands, Obsidian, Marceline, and Bubblegum come back together. They say "I love you" on screen, something the show had been building toward for years. They save the Glass Kingdom together. They fight and make up and get to be, finally, in the same space without the history pressing too hard against the present. 1,000 years of loneliness. And then, this. The music still going. The bass still resonating. The girl Simon found crying in the ruins of a dead world. Still here, still living, still choosing to be. There is something in that which is close to miraculous. Part 5. Princess Bubblegum, the Mother Gum's daughter. Consider what it means to have no childhood. Not in the metaphorical sense, not the "I grew up too fast" that people sometimes mean when their circumstances pushed adult responsibility onto them young. But in the literal sense, Bonnabelle Bubblegum did not have a childhood. She did not have parents, or a cradle, or the slow accumulation of years that most living things use to grow into themselves. She separated from a mass of sentient pink bubblegum roughly 827 years before the events of the main series, and simply was formed, present. Already intelligent, already capable of complex thought and feeling, already shaped by whatever the Mother Gum had accumulated across its existence. She and her brother Nettie fell from the ceiling of an abandoned building where the Mother Gum rested. Nettie, who hit a sharp rock on the way down and was immediately traumatized by the pain and the vastness of the outside world, retreated into himself and never really came out. He found the roots of a particular tree and attached himself to them, drawing nutrients up through the roots and releasing them as a life-giving candy juice that would eventually power the entire Candy Kingdom. Nettie is not damaged in a way that can be fixed. He is just built differently, as Bubblegum explains to Finn and Jake when they finally meet him. Some people need different things. Nettie needs to be left alone with his tree. The best thing Bubblegum can do for him is build a world around that need and let him exist inside it without pressure. She builds the Candy Kingdom around Nettie's tree. Literally. She builds the entire civilization around her brother's particular requirement for safety and solitude, which is arguably the most loving thing the show depicts anyone doing for anyone. And it is done without fanfare, without Nettie ever knowing the full extent of it. The kingdom is a monument to a kind of care that does not expect recognition. But Bubblegum is lonely. She is newly emerged from the Mother Gum. She has a brother who cannot be her companion, and the world around her is still largely the wreckage of the Mushroom War recovering, mutating, beginning the long process of becoming Ooh, but not there yet. She wants family. She wants the specific richness that comes from being surrounded by people who are genuinely her people, so she creates them. Her first creation is Gumbald, whom she designs to be an uncle figure, someone wise and experienced and sturdy, someone she can defer to and learn from and share the loneliness with. She gives him intelligence and ambition and the capacity for complex thought, all of which she intends to be assets. Gumbald takes one look at the situation, a powerful young woman with vast creative capabilities and a large piece of post-apocalyptic real estate, and begins planning. Gumbald has ideas. He wants to build a candy city, a proper metropolis, and he wants to run it. Bubblegum wants something different. She wants a home, a family, a garden-scale thing built around relationship rather than power. They fight about this. Gumbald creates Aunt Lolly and Cousin Sheikle to help build his coalition, and then, when Bubblegum refuses to cede authority, devises a plan to chemically lobotomize her, a serum he calls Dum Dum Juice that would reduce her to a simple, docile candy person without the intelligence or the agency to stop him. In the confrontation, The dum-dum juice hits Gumball instead of its intended target. He becomes a large, jovial bowl of punch. Lolly and Cheekle, whom he had already fed the juice to, are already simple candy people. Bubblegum looks at what has happened and makes a decision. She will not undo it. She will leave them as they are. This is an act she later has to reckon with. It is one of her clearest moral failures, choosing to leave three people she created in a chemically induced state of diminished capacity because it is convenient for her. She calls herself princess and builds her kingdom. She creates the candy people over the following centuries. She mentions doing this shortly after the Gumball incident, wanting to be surrounded by people she could connect with. The candy people are created from her genetic material combined with sugar and candy. They are, in a meaningful sense, her children, though she relates to them more as subjects and wards. She is their ruler and their creator and their caretaker, and sometimes, when she is being honest with herself, also their jailer, she makes them sweet and simple and somewhat dependent because that is what she wanted. A world she could manage, a population she could protect. The show watches this tension across Bubblegum's arc with careful attention. She is genuinely good, genuinely caring, genuinely committed to the well-being of the people around her. And she is also genuinely controlling, genuinely inclined to make unilateral decisions about what other people need, genuinely uncomfortable with the parts of the world she cannot organize into systems. She installs cameras throughout the Candy Kingdom at one point during the series, monitoring her citizens without their knowledge. She creates the Rattleballs, a robotic police force, and then, when they prove too violent, destroys them all rather than reforming the system, saving only one. She experiments on people. The Lich, twice, gets into the Candy Kingdom because Bubblegum's security architecture, however sophisticated, has gaps that emerge from her certainty in her own intelligence. She knows she does this. She is aware of her own authoritarian tendencies in a way that makes them harder rather than easier to address. She can see them clearly enough to know they are problematic, but not clearly enough to consistently override them in the moment. She is brilliant, and she is lonely, and she has been doing this for 8 centuries, and nobody at her level of intelligence and power is going to be entirely healthy after 8 centuries of it. When she is deposed in a popular election late in the series, the Candy People, whom she has made somewhat simple and credulous, vote for the King of Ooh, a carnival barker who promises them a good time. It is initially framed as a loss, but becomes, in the processing, something Bubblegum needed. She steps back. She lets the Candy People make a mistake. She watches the consequences of removing her careful management. And then, when the crisis passes and she is reinstated, she is slightly different, slightly less tightly wound, slightly more willing to let the people around her have the experience of autonomy, even when autonomy leads to mistakes. Bubblegum is the candy elemental, which means she is a reincarnating cosmic force tied to the element of candy of sweetness and creation, the same way the Lich is tied to the element of death and decay. Previous incarnations appear throughout the show's history. Future incarnations are implied. She is not fully individual in the way Finn or Marceline are individual. She is also the current expression of something that has existed and will exist beyond her particular manifestation. This is another layer of what it means to be Bonnibel Bubblegum, carrying a cosmic weight she did not choose, alongside the specific identity she built over 8 centuries of specific choices. At the end of the show, she and Marceline finally get to be together openly, without the complicated history pressing quite so hard. In Obsidian, they fight and make up and say the words. In the series epilogue, they are shown dancing. Their relationship is the show's most carefully constructed love story, 2 people who have known each other for centuries, who share a particular understanding of loneliness and power, and what it costs to live a very long time, who have hurt each other in specific and deeply personal ways, who separated and came back and separated again and came back again and eventually ran out of reasons not to choose each other. Bubblegum began as a blob of pink gum that came to consciousness in the ruins of a dead world. She ended as a ruler and a scientist and a creator and a partner, running a kingdom she built with her own hands and populated with her own children. Whatever the mother gum was, whatever consciousness gestated in that post-apocalyptic mass of pink cellular material and eventually produced Bonnibel and Nettie, it made something that lasted. Part 6. Finn, the human A-hero across lifetimes. There is something specific about Finn the human that the show keeps circling back to, something it takes most of the series to fully articulate. He has always been here. Not Finn specifically, not this particular boy in this particular white hat in this particular post-apocalyptic version of Earth, but the soul of him, the function he performs in the universe, the pattern of it. The hero. Finn is a reincarnation. His past lives are glimpsed in the Season 5 episode The Vault, when he undergoes a hypnotic regression that lets him access memories stored in what BMO calls his deep subconscious. What he finds there is a sequence of lives, each complete and separate and connected to the others by something essential. The first is a comet. Specifically, the Blue Catalyst Comet, the same cosmic mechanism that carried the Lich's soul to Earth 65 million years ago, brought another soul, the one that would eventually become Finn, in a different form, at a different time. A blue comet, the embodiment of good, landing somewhere on Earth after the Mushroom War and contributing something to the world that was still rebuilding itself. Then a butterfly, small, brief, light, moving through a world of enormous consequence as something that can only observe and flutter and exist on the scale of individual days rather than decades. Then a pink interdimensional blob, something Finn in the hypnotic session cannot even fully describe. A being from outside normal reality, a form of consciousness that does not map cleanly onto physical categories, looking at everything from somewhere else. Then Shoko. Shoko is the life that gets the most attention, and with good reason. She is the life that explains the ghost Finn has been encountering throughout the show, a green-tinged, distorted figure that appears in his dreams and his subconscious, calling to him wordlessly. Shoko is a thief. She is young, roughly Finn's age, with black hair and olive skin, and one arm. Her parents sold her right arm for a computer when she was small and left her at a dojo. She does not frame this with self-pity. She is matter-of-fact about her own history in the way people are when they have had a long time to make peace with things they cannot change. Shoko works for various criminal organizations, stealing things in exchange for enough to survive. She takes a job from the Bath Boy gang, steal Princess Bubblegum's amulet. To get close enough to steal it, she stages an attack by claiming the Bath Boys hurt her. And Bubblegum, who is gentle and trusting and in the early days of building her kingdom and her family, takes her in, gives her a mechanical arm, introduces her to a young peppermint butler, shows her the beginnings of what will become the Candy Kingdom. Shoko makes a friend. She should not, given what she is there to do. She makes a friend anyway. She steals the amulet. She runs. She is hit by the Gumball Guardian's laser eyes in the process and falls into the river of radioactive waste running through the Proto-Candy Kingdom. She crawls out, transformed the waste, has changed her, given her a second arm, reshaped her, and she dies at the base of a young tree on the edge of the kingdom, having returned the amulet to the roots. Having done, at the very end, the thing that mattered. The tree grows around her bones. The Candy Kingdom is built up around the tree. Centuries pass. Finn and Jake come to live in the treehouse, and Shoko is beneath their kitchen floor the whole time, her ghost lingering, waiting for the opportunity to make the thing she did wrong right again. When Finn finally reaches her in the vault, she gives him the amulet still there, still held in her skeletal hands, and can finally rest. Every one of these lives is defined by the same quality: the orientation toward what is good and necessary, even at personal cost. The comet brought light. The butterfly witnessed. The pink blob observed from elsewhere. Shoko stole things and then gave everything she had to fix one particular wrong. And Finn is the current expression of this recurring pattern, the soul that keeps coming back to this world in forms that want to help it, want to protect it, want to do the right thing, even when the right thing is hard to identify and harder to execute. Finn is the last human boy in the land of Oo. This fact is established early and maintained throughout. He was found as an infant in the woods, wrapped in a hat, by Joshua and Margaret, a pair of dog detectives who brought him home and raised him as their own, alongside their son Jermaine and the baby who would become Jake. His biological parents are revealed in later seasons. Martin Mertens, his father, is a cosmic drifter who turns out to be deeply selfish in specific and irresponsible ways, and a woman with whom Martin had a brief and apparently non-serious relationship before moving on. Martin Mertens is a lesson in fathers who are charming and useless, and the show handles Finn's processing of this discovery with real care, acknowledging that it is painful and that the pain is legitimate, and that loving someone and finding them disappointing are not mutually exclusive states. The season 6 finale brings the most explicit articulation of what Finn is. The purple catalyst comet arrives, and Finn meets it. The comet, ancient and intelligent and communicating in something broader than language, offers him a choice. Stay in this form, live out this life, or come with it into something larger. Transform. Move into the next thing. Finn turns it down. He chooses He chooses the life he has. His father, Martin, who has also been brought to this moment through a series of improbable circumstances, accepts the offer instead and departs into cosmic becoming. This is the most significant thing about Finn. Given the option to be something transcendent, he chooses to be a person, a specific person, in a specific place, with specific relationships. He has been a comet and a butterfly and a dimensional blob and a thief, and now he is a boy with a sword and a dog for a brother and a world he loves. And when the universe offers him a way out of the particularity of being Finn, he looks at the offer and says no. That is the show's central heroic statement, made very quietly at the end of a season that had seemed to be building towards something cosmic and grand. Heroism is not transcendence. It is presence. It is showing up for the specific people and places you love, in the specific form you currently occupy, and choosing that over and over even when the universe suggests you could be something larger. Finn loses his arm multiple times. He grows it back sometimes and sometimes does not. He has a magical grass sword that takes his arm and eventually becomes its own entity Fern, a complicated being made of grass and Finn's hair and the complicated magic that followed him around. He has a father who he wanted and found wanting. He has a world he was born into from a background that no one can fully explain. The last human, the inheritor of a species that almost destroyed itself, growing up in the ruins of everything humanity built and choosing to be good anyway. His relationships define him more than his battles. The running thread of his crush on Princess Bubblegum, which resolves when he realizes she is too far above him in age and circumstance to be what he needs, and makes space for him to grow towards something more equal. The friendship with Marceline, which is warm and genuine and grounded in mutual recognition. The love for Jake, which is the show's central emotional relationship, the adopted brothers who chose each other long before they understood what choice meant. Finn the human is the show's moral center. Not because he is perfect, he makes mistakes constantly, acts from hurt or impulse or incomplete information, breaks things he cares about and has to figure out how to put them back together. But because he is always oriented toward good. Even when he cannot find good, he is looking for it. Even when he fails at it, he minds. Even when the world is confusing and painful and the answer is not clear, he keeps asking what the right thing is. In the Together Again special, Finn dies an old man on a distant planet, and his soul goes to the afterlife, and what he finds there is Jake, who has been waiting, who has a whole arc in the afterlife and has been working on something important, and their reunion is quiet and warm and perfect, two brothers finding each other again. Part 7. Jake the Dog, the Alien Among Us. For most of the show's run, Jake the dog is the uncomplicated heart of it. He is warm and funny and wise in a slightly sideways way. His advice is not always good advice, but it is always genuinely meant, and often arrives at the right place by a sufficiently weird route that it ends up being useful anyway. He loves his family. He loves food. He loves Lady Rainicorn with an enthusiasm that never dims across all the seasons we know them as a couple. He is comfortable in a way that reads as effortless until you realize, slowly, that it takes a certain kind of practiced self-knowledge to be that comfortable with yourself. Jake's physical nature is strange from the beginning. The stretching, the morphing, the ability to become essentially any shape or size, the show presents this as a quirk of being a magic dog and lets it sit there for a while without much interrogation. Jake himself believes, in the early seasons, that he got his powers from rolling around in a magical mud puddle as a puppy. He explains this to a witch in Season 1 with the confidence of someone who has told the story enough times that it has solidified into personal mythology. The story is wrong, but he does not know that yet. The truth arrives in fragments across later seasons, and is finally assembled in Joshua and Margaret Investigations, an episode told in flashback before Jake's birth. Joshua and Margaret, Jake's dog parents, are private detectives. They are investigating a case involving some stolen pies. In the woods, they encounter a creature blue-gray, many-eyed, with long eye stalks and a body that moves with the liquid ease of something without rigid structure. It is not from Ooh. It is not from Earth in any recognizable sense. It bites Joshua on the head. A boil forms on Joshua's head. He ignores it for a while because there are things to do and cases to solve, and Margaret to reassure that he is fine. Then the boil becomes a pustule. Then the pustule becomes something that is clearly alive and moving. And then, on a night when Joshua is alone in the family home, Jake the dog is born from his father's head, already small and yellow and possessed of stretchy powers he has had since the moment of his emergence. The creature that bit Joshua later revealed to be Warren Ampersand, an alien shapeshifter of considerable age and power, did not infect Joshua in the way a disease infects a host. It used him. It used Joshua's body as an incubation environment for its own genetic material, producing an offspring with a blend of Joshua's canine genetics and Warren's alien shape-shifting biology. Jake is not a magical dog. He is a half-alien, shape-shifting hybrid, and his powers are not the result of magic at all, but of an extraordinary biology that Princess Bubblegum is actually correct about in an early episode. When she says his abilities are a genetic mutation rather than magic, Jake does not learn any of this until very late in the series. For most of his life, he operates on the mud puddle story, and the mud puddle story is enough because Jake is comfortable with not knowing everything. He is comfortable with mystery in a way that is genuinely rare, not incuriously comfortable, not the comfort of someone who has given up asking, but the comfort of someone who has decided that the asking is less important than the living. Warren Ampersand eventually makes contact. He appears as Jake's alien father, takes him to his homeworld, shows him a museum he has constructed in Jake's honor. He appears to be dying. He is, in Jake's reading of the situation, a lonely old being who wants to know his son before he goes. Jake, because Jake is Jake, accepts this, opens himself to it, is willing to be known by this person who made him without knowing he was making him. And then Warren reveals his actual plan. He brought Jake here to steal his powers. Warren does this to all his offspring. He produces them, waits for them to develop, and then extracts the shape-shifting energy from them, which kills them in the process and extends Warren's own life. He has done this many, many times. He intended to do it to Jake. And, having learned that Jake has children 5 puppies with Lady Rainicorn, each with their own version of the shape-shifting ability, he intends to do it to them as well. Jake fights his father. Jake wins. He throws Warren Ampersand into a black hole, and that is that. But what the episode leaves behind is significant. Jake's true form, the one Warren demonstrates as his own, the one Jake can access once he understands it, is something else. Blue, multi-eyed, winged, larger and stranger and more powerful than the yellow dog form he inhabits normally. He can become this. He chooses not to, most of the time. The yellow dog is who Jake is. The alien true form is what Jake is descended from. He knows the difference between those two things, and he acts on that knowledge by choosing, every day, to be the person he has built, rather than the creature his biology would theoretically allow. This mirrors Finn's choice at the Catalyst Comet, and it mirrors Marceline's choice in Stakes. The theme runs through Adventure Time's major characters like a continuous thread. Given the option to become something else, something larger or more powerful, or more cosmically significant, they choose their specific selves. They choose the relationships and the places and the particular shapes of the lives they have been living. Transcendence is offered and declined. Specificity is chosen. Jake's relationship with Lady Rainicorn is one of the show's gentlest pleasures, a love that is shown across many episodes as settled and warm and rooted. Lady Rainicorn speaks only Korean in the original series, which means that much of what she says is inaccessible to viewers who only speak English, which gives her a quality of slightly contained mystery even as she is clearly a full person with her own perspective and humor and warmth. Her family thinks Jake is food. They are eventually persuaded otherwise. Their 5 children, TV, Kim Kil-won, Charlie, Viola, and Jake Jr., are each distinct people with distinct personalities and distinct relationships to their unusual heritage. TV is lethargic and screen-obsessed and has more depth than he shows. Kim Kil-won is disciplined and businesslike and loves his father more than he lets on. Charlie is adventurous and psychic. Viola is artistic. Jake Jr. is tiny and looks exactly like Jake. They are a family, in all the complicated, messy, full sense of the word. Jake dies at some point after the main series ends. When Distant Lands Together Again takes place, he is gone. He has died as living things die, and he has gone somewhere to the afterlife, to the new death's realm, where he has been spending his time making a better system for the dead and waiting for his brother. His death is not shown. We just arrive in a world that has had it. And the show, characteristically, does not dwell on the grief, except to honor it by showing what it made possible. Finn arriving in the afterlife, finding Jake, and the two of them completing one more adventure together before moving on. Jake the dog is the show's argument for the sufficiency of an ordinary life lived with extraordinary love. Not every being in Adventure Time needs to be ancient or cosmic or carrying the weight of civilizations. Some of them just need to stretch themselves into a car shape while their brother climbs in and they drive somewhere together. Some of them just need to make bacon pancakes in the morning and listen to music and love the people around them with the specific, uncomplicated devotion that turns out to be among those powerful forces in the universe. Part 8. Prismo, the Time Room, and the Multiverse. There exists, at the exact center of time, a room. It is outside normal reality, but somehow touching all realities simultaneously. Its walls are covered with screens, and those screens show every moment that has ever existed or will ever exist, all playing at once the birth of stars and the death of stars, the first cell dividing in the first ocean, the last conscious thought of the last living thing, all of it collapsed into an infinite present tense. The floor is scattered with beanbag chairs. There is a pickle jar. There is always a new movie to watch. The decor is somewhere between cosmic and deliberately cozy, the aesthetic of someone who has had an eternity to decide how they want to spend it and settled on comfortable. Prismo lives here. Prismo is the Wishmaster, a two-dimensional being who appears as a flat pink and yellow figure floating in the time room, and his function is simple. He grants one wish per person per lifetime. Any wish, clearly stated, no exceptions. He is not a malevolent genie who looks for ways to twist words against the wisher. He processes wishes with the weary professionalism of someone who has done this job for so long that the work itself is less interesting than the people doing the wishing. Prismo is also the dream of an old man. This is not a metaphor. There is a specific old man, somewhere in normal reality, who is asleep, and Prismo is the form his dream takes. Wake the old man up and Prismo ceases to exist. This is the condition Prismo lives under, not just the isolation of the time room, not just the loneliness of existing at the center of everything with no one to talk to, but the added existential precariousness of being a being whose entire reality depends on another being continuing to sleep. He is, simultaneously, all-powerful and profoundly fragile. He can reshape timelines. He can grant any wish, however impossible, however universe-bending. He has seen things that make the Lich look like a minor inconvenience. And he can be erased from existence by someone making too much noise near a sleeping old man. When the Lich arrives at the time room in the Season 4, 5 transition and makes its wish, the extinction of all life Prismo's face in that moment tells the full story of what it means to be the Wishmaster. There is sadness there, resignation, the specific exhaustion of someone who has granted so many wishes and watched so many of them go wrong, and who cannot refuse even this one, because refusing is not what he does. The rules are older than he is. He processes the wish. He grants it. What saves everyone is Finn's counter-wish, screamed in the same moment. He wishes the Lich had never existed. The two wishes collide and Prismo has to handle both of them simultaneously, and what he produces is the Farm World timeline, a reality where the mushroom bomb was never detonated, where the Lich was therefore never awakened, where Simon Petrikov froze the bomb in midair and spent the resulting 400-year ice age preserving the Earth at the cost of his sanity and ultimately his life. Farm World is not the same as Ooh. It is a world without magic, without mutation, without the post-apocalyptic transformation that made Ooh Ooh. A world where humans are still the dominant species, but are also now living in a world encased in ice for 4 centuries, dealing with the social and biological consequences of that. Prismo explains to Finn, in the aftermath, the mechanics of what just happened. The original timeline did not cease to exist when the Farm World timeline was created. Both persist. The farm world branches off as an alternate timeline, running parallel to the main timeline that Finn and Jake come from and eventually return to. This is how the multiverse works in Adventure Time's cosmology. Wishes do not erase previous realities, they create new branches. Every wish Prismo grants is a new timeline, a new branch of possibility, running alongside all the others. The multiverse in Adventure Time is immense. Prismo has glimpsed all of it from the time room. Alternate versions of familiar characters exist in infinite variations, some familiar enough to recognize. Some diverge to the point of being essentially different people with the same faces. The Fiona and Cake universe, which was originally the Ice King's fanfiction, turns out to be a real alternate dimension that Simon created inside his own mind during the centuries as the Ice King, a world where he could tell a story in which everything was different, in which Finn was a girl and Jake was a cat, and everyone got to be something slightly other than what the original world made them. In the Fiona and Cake spin-off series, Simon walks through the multiverse with the gender-swapped characters from his mind, pursued by a cosmic auditor named Scarab whose job is to delete unauthorized universes. The relationship between the real universe and the fictional one, between the dreaming mind and the dream, between creator and created, these are the questions the spin-off circles around, deeply in the tradition of Adventure Time, asking the philosophical questions that children's entertainment is not supposed to bother with. Prismo's friendship with Jake is one of the show's most unexpected and affecting relationships. Jake falls asleep in the time room at one point, which means Jake is also dreaming, which means that in the dream logic of the episode, Prismo and the old man who dreams him are both present in the same space. They hang out, they watch movies, they eat pickles. Jake is the kind of person who would make friends with the Wishmaster, not because he wants a wish, but because the Wishmaster seems like someone who could use a friend, and Jake has never needed a more complicated reason than that to offer one. When the Lich kills the old man using Jake's body as a vessel, in one of the show's most disturbing sequences, Prismo dies. He simply stops existing. The time room is empty. The screens still play, but there is no one to watch them. The Lich has killed the dream by waking the dreamer. Jake gets him back. Jake goes to the time room and finds the Cosmic Owl, who helps him use the rules of the time room to recreate the conditions of Prismo's existence. The old man dreams again. Prismo comes back. He is restored, brought back from nothing by his friend's determination and the specific logic of a place that sits outside time. Prismo's restored self is essentially indistinguishable from his original self, and the show does not particularly interrogate whether this is the same Prismo or a new Prismo with the old Prismo's memories. This is, characteristically, a question the show is comfortable leaving open. Identity when consciousness can be discontinued and restarted is a genuine philosophical puzzle. The show is more interested in what Prismo does with being back than in resolving the metaphysics of whether back means what it usually means. What he does is keep the pickles fresh, keep the screens running, welcome visitors, grant wishes with professional sadness. Be there, at the center of time, for whenever someone needs him or just wants company. The time room, in Adventure Time's cosmology, is a necessary institution. Wishes need to be processable somewhere. Desire needs to have a location where it can be formally received and fulfilled. That this location looks like a cosmic bachelor pad is not an accident. It is the show's argument, in architecture, that the most important places are the places where someone makes you feel welcome. The time room is important because Prismo makes it important by being in it, by caring about the pickles, by being genuinely glad when someone visits. Part 9. Golb, the chaos behind everything. Before we can talk about GOLB, we need to understand what everything else in the Adventure Time universe is built in relation to. The show's cosmology has, at its base level, a tension between two fundamental principles: order and chaos, creation and dissolution, life and the ending of life. These are not framed as good and evil in a simplistic sense. The show is too sophisticated for that, but they are framed as real forces, forces that have existed since before the universe as the characters know it came into being, forces that have specific embodiments in the world of the story. The Lich is the embodiment of the ending of life. It is not exactly the embodiment of chaos. It has a clear specific goal, which makes it more organized than truly chaotic. But it is aligned with the dissolving end of things. Golb is something more fundamental. Golb is the embodiment of chaos itself, of disorder, of the entropic tendency of the universe toward complexity collapsing back into simplicity. Golb is not evil in the way the Lich is evil. Golb does not have goals. Golb has a nature, and that nature is destruction, but destruction without intent, the way a hurricane is destructive without intending anything. Golb is first glimpsed without being named in a Season 5 episode called Puhoi, where Finn, in a strange interstitial moment, is transported to a pillow dimension, lives an entire lifetime there, dies as an old man, and in the process of that death moves through some intermediate space before returning to his own body. In that intermediate space, he bounces off the tongue of a vast, red, four-eyed entity that tries to eat him. The entity does not speak, it does not pursue. It simply exists, in the dark, with the quality of something that has always been there and will always be there. He is named properly 2 seasons later when the backstory of Magic Man is explored. Magic Man, an ancient, powerful, deeply erratic Martian wizard who has been present in Ooo since early in the show, once had a wife named Margles. Margles was taken by Golb. Not killed. Taken. Absorbed into the being of chaos in a way that means she no longer exists in any form accessible to the people who love her. Magic Man, driven to something like madness by the loss, has spent centuries being impossible because impossibility was the only state he could manage after experiencing something like that. The Lich identifies itself as the last scholar of Golb in the Season 8 episode Whispers. This is a revealing self-description. The Lich is not Golb's servant in the way a minion serves a master. The Lich is a scholar, something that studies, understands, and propagates Golb's principle in the physical world. The Lich is what happens when Golb's nature is channeled through something that can act intentionally. Golb is chaos without direction. The Lich is chaos with a target. Betty Groff, Simon's fiancée, has spent years after her arrival in the present, pursuing increasingly desperate strategies to free Simon from the crown. She absorbs Magic Man's magic and his madness in her pursuit of this goal, becoming something like what Magic Man was powerful and somewhat unhinged, and too fixated on one outcome to assess the situation clearly. She concocts a plan involving Golb, reasoning that Golb's power, properly harnessed, might reverse the crown's effects on Simon. She and the redeemed Magic Man, now called Normal Man, having found some of his stability back, summon Golb to the land of Ooo. Golb's arrival is exactly what you would expect from a cosmic chaos entity landing in the middle of an ongoing civil war between Bubblegum's forces and Gumbald's candy army. The war, which was already complicated enough, becomes irrelevant. The two sides unite to deal with something that does not distinguish between them. Golb's corrupting touch turns living things into monsters. Its army, assembled from the corrupted, pours across the battlefield. The heroes who were fighting each other 5 minutes ago are suddenly fighting shoulder to shoulder against something that makes their own conflict feel very small. Inside Golb, in its stomach, the digestive process strips everything to its essential nature. The Ice King's crown, the accumulated magic of 1,000 years, is reduced to its original form, a wishing crown, primal and clean. Simon is reduced to Simon, Betty is reduced to Betty, without the magic she accumulated, without the madness that came with it. They are in there together, finally, as themselves, as the people they were before all of this started. Betty makes her wish. The wish she makes is not the wish that would be strategically optimal. It is the wish that is true. She wishes for the power to keep Simon safe. The crown, responsive to the deepest truth of whoever wears it, makes her that wish literally. She merges with Golb, becoming the new expression of the entity, a fusion that carries Golb's immense chaotic power but also Betty's love and intention. Golbetti departs through a portal in the sky. The immediate crisis is resolved. BMO is the one who turns the tide. BMO, the small robot who is also, somehow, an ancient crew member of a generation ship and also just a little kid, sings a song, Time Adventure, written by Rebecca Sugar, about the way time moves and how the people we love are still somehow reachable in the past, even after the present takes them from us. BMO's song creates a force field that hurts Golb because Golb, as pure chaos, is vulnerable to the one thing chaos cannot encompass: harmony. The song spreads. The people of Ooo, all of them, join in. Harmony as weapon against disorder. Golb, in a cosmological sense, cannot be defeated. It is a fundamental principle of the universe. What the finale achieves is not destruction, but transformation. The chaos principle is modified by its merger with Betty's love and directed through a portal away from O. Golb remains somewhere, presumably in the multiverse. Betty remains. The chaos continues to exist, but it has been, for now, redirected, given something to be other than simply destructive. The final battle of Adventure Time is won by a small robot singing about love and time, and by a woman sacrificing herself to protect the person who needed protecting. These are the tools the show has always argued actually matter. Part 10. The finale and what came after. The series finale of Adventure Time, Come Along With Me, is framed from 1,000 years in the future. In that future 2,000 years after the Mushroom War, 1,000 years after Finn and Jake and Bubblegum and Marceline, two young adventurers named Shermie and Beth discover Finn's mechanical arm in the ruins of what was once the Candy Kingdom. They seek out someone who can tell them about the legendary heroes of the old days. They find Bimo. Bimo is the king of the land now, sitting on a mountain, very old and very small, and very willing to tell a story. This framing device does something smart. It tells us, before we see any of the finale events, that the world continues. That however bad things get in the next 4 episodes, the world keeps going. Characters are still remembered 1,000 years later as legendary. The Candy Kingdom fell or changed or transformed into something new, but something is still here. The framing is the show's final assurance that none of it was wasted. Even in the worst moments of Come Along With Me, you know that Ooh has a future. The conflict the finale centers around is the Gum War Bubblegum's confrontation with her uncle Gumbald, who has been returned to his original intelligence and has spent his restored consciousness on revenge. He has built an army of candy soldiers, bred and trained for war. Bubblegum has her own forces. They face each other across a battlefield that used to be a peaceful meadow. Finn and Jake's contribution to the Gum War is, characteristically, to try to stop it. They go to the Nightmare Juice world, a space inside their own collective subconscious accessible through a specific magical item, and face the fears that have been accumulating across 10 seasons of adventure. Inside the Nightmare Juice world, Finn faces the figure he has been most afraid of throughout a combined image of his grass sword's corrupting influence, his absent father, his history with Princess Bubblegum, the Lich. He faces it, which is different from defeating it. You cannot defeat fear. You can only look at it clearly enough that it loses some of its power. What stops the Gum War is not a battle. It is, in the end, a moment of recognition between Bubblegum and Lolly, the Candy Kingdom's former aunt who was turned into a candy person by Gumbald's juice and who chose to side not with Gumbald's revenge but with the possibility of peace. Bubblegum looks at her enemy across a battlefield and Lolly steps between them and says, "This war does not have to happen." And then Golb arrives and the war that was about to happen becomes irrelevant. What follows is the sequence we have already discussed. The battle against Golb, Betty's sacrifice, BMO's song, the harmony of Ooh defeating the chaos of the cosmos in the most Adventure Time way possible, and then the aftermath. Simon free. Gunter the Penguin, revealed to be a disguised form of the ancient cosmic entity Orgalorg, who has been trapped in penguin form for millennia, absorbs the crown and becomes the Ice Thing, taking Simon's place as the ruler of the newly renamed Ice Thingdom and marrying Turtle Princess. Fern, the grass being who had been a copy of Finn and had struggled with his own identity across several seasons, dies in the battle absorbed back into the grass that made him and Finn and Jake plant his seedling in the wreckage of their destroyed treehouse. The seedling grows into a new treehouse. The tree contains a grass sword in its wood. Fern is still there, in the most literal possible sense, in the structure of the home Finn and Jake rebuild. The final image of the main series is Finn and Jake on a beach, watching the boats arrive. Humans returning to Ooh after 1,000 years of absence. The species that destroyed the world has, somewhere, survived and recovered enough to come back. Finn, the last human boy in Ooh, watches them come. The Distant Lands specials extend the story. BMO goes back further in time, exploring BMO's origin on a generation ship fleeing the Mushroom War. Obsidian explores Bubblegum and Marceline's history and their relationships healing. Together Again finds Finn, an old man on another world, dying, and Jake already waiting in the afterlife, and the two brothers completing one final adventure and then moving on together. The show's timeline across all of these is one of the most elaborate in animated history. 1,000 years of prehistory, a decade of main series, an immediate post-series continued in the specials, and two endpoint references, the 1,000 years future framing of the finale and Shermie and Beth as Finn and Jake's possible future reincarnations. Shermie and Beth, two adventurers, 1,000 years after Finn and Jake, finding a mechanical arm and seeking the story behind it. The implication, never stated explicitly, is that they might be the next expressions of the same souls Finn and Jake reincarnated, finding each other again in a new time. Jake confirmed as a reincarnation of Shoko's tiger, and Finn as a reincarnation of the blue comet, and both of them as part of a pattern that repeats across millennia. The story does not end, it cycles back. Shermie and Beth are already on their adventure by the time BMO finishes telling them the old one. Part 11. The deepest themes what Adventure Time was really about. A children's cartoon, that is what it is, technically. 11-minute episodes, brightly colored, action-forward, with a talking dog and a boy with a magic sword. It aired on Cartoon Network beginning in 2010. It was aimed at kids. It also contained embedded in its premise and executed across 10 seasons with remarkable consistency, some of the most sophisticated thematic work in the history of American animation. The show's central subject, the thing it returns to across every storyline and every character arc, is time. Not in the science fiction sense of time travel and temporal paradoxes, though it has those too. In the philosophical sense, what time does to people, what it costs, what it preserves, what it takes away, and what, sometimes, it gives back. Simon Petrikov is a meditation on what time does to consciousness under pressure. Marceline is a meditation on what it means to outlive everything you have ever loved. Princess Bubblegum is a meditation on what 1,000 years of absolute responsibility does to someone's relationship with control and vulnerability. The Lich is a meditation on what time feels like to something that existed before time, an entity so old that the universe itself is, to it, a temporary condition. These are not small ideas dressed in cartoon clothes. They are the actual ideas, taken seriously, explored with the care they deserve. The show's post-apocalyptic setting is not incidental. It is the argument. Adventure Time takes place after the worst thing imaginable and shows a world that is, despite everything, beautiful and alive and worth protecting. The Candy Kingdom is built on the ruins of a civilization that destroyed itself, and it is a kingdom of sweetness and light and terrible vulnerability. The Candy people are soft and frightened and easily panicked and also genuinely kind. They are what life is, in the ruins of what destruction was. This is the show's fundamental optimism, and it is an earned optimism, not a naive one. The show does not pretend the Mushroom War did not happen, or that the Lich is not real, or that Golb is not somewhere in the cosmos, waiting to be summoned by someone desperate enough. It looks at all of those things clearly and says, and yet there is still candy. And yet there are still friends who will cross the dead worlds to find you. And yet there is still music. Still the bass resonating through a 1,000-year-old amplifier. Still the song BMO sings when the world is ending that turns out to be exactly what was needed. The show's treatment of loss is remarkable. It does not resolve loss. It does not fix it or minimize it or offer cheap consolation. Simon loses Betty and regains his mind, but the two cannot coexist. Being Simon again means Betty is gone, and he will spend the rest of his life carrying both truths simultaneously. Marceline loses everyone she has ever known to time, and continues anyway, and the continuation is not triumph over grief, but the accommodation of it. Bubblegum loses the Candy Kingdom twice and loses Marceline once, and loses her uncle to his own bitterness and continues building anyway, because she is a builder and stopping is not something she knows how to do. The show's treatment of family is equally sophisticated. Jake and Finn are adoptive brothers, raised by dog parents who found a human baby in the woods and brought him home without hesitation. This is the show's primary family unit, and it is built entirely on choice on the decision made by Joshua and Margaret to be Finn's parents, and Jermaine's parents, and Jake's parents, without any biological imperative to do so. The biological family the show offers is not better or more significant than this chosen family. Martin Mertens is Finn's biological father, and is also a selfish drifter who puts his own freedom ahead of his son's needs. Joshua and Margaret are not related to Finn and are the parents the show clearly considers his real parents. This extends across the whole world of Ooh. Marceline is Simon's surrogate daughter, though they share no blood. Simon is the closest thing to a father Marceline has had. The relationship between them is more real and more lasting than anything biological. It persists across 1,000 years of change, through the Ice King's madness and back out the other side, through every version of both of them. When Simon moves in with Marceline at the end of the series, it is the completion of something that started in the ruins of civilization, two people finding each other in a destroyed world and deciding to be family. Adventure Time is also, quietly and consistently, a show about the ethics of power. Every major character with power is shown using it badly at some point. Princess Bubblegum surveils her citizens. The Lich's power is the corruption of the soul of the world. Simon's power keeps him alive but destroys who he is. Finn's heroic impulse, if not balanced by wisdom, tips into recklessness. Jake's powers are used often for the path of least resistance. The show does not offer any characters as uncomplicated exemplars of power wielded well. It shows instead the continuous, imperfect, necessary work of using what you have in service of what matters, getting it wrong and trying again. The show's finale villain, Golb, is the apotheosis of this theme. Golb is power that exists without ethics, without intent, without the modification that relationship and love and time produce in beings capable of those things. Golb is what power looks like when there is no one inside it. And Golb is defeated or at least redirected by the thing that is the opposite of that. A small robot's sincere song about love, taken up by hundreds of voices, creating something that chaos cannot absorb because chaos cannot sing. Adventure Time is a story about why connection matters more than power. It demonstrates this not by having characters say it, but by showing the Lich, the most powerful entity in Ooh's near vicinity, ultimately housed in a gentle giant child who loves his parents. By showing Prismo, the Wishmaster with power over reality, most fully alive when someone visits just to hang out. By showing Simon Petrikov, who survived 1,000 years of apocalypse, restored to himself not by magical force but by a woman's love made literal by a wishing crown. By showing Marceline, who has defeated every enemy she has ever faced, most herself in a quiet moment playing music for someone she loves. The show says, across 10 seasons and however many hours of content, the candy matters. The pickles, the bacon pancakes, the song, the visit, the moment when someone sits down next to you, not because they want something, but because they want to be near you. The multiverse is immense. Golb is somewhere out there. The Lich is still inside Sweet Pea, dormant, patient. The universe will keep generating problems of escalating cosmic scale. But in the time room, at the center of all of it, Prismo is watching his screens and keeping the pickles fresh. And somewhere in Ooh, Marceline is playing her bass guitar in a home she shares with the person she loves, and Simon is grading papers about magical artifacts, and Finn's seedling treehouse is growing, and BMO is sitting on a mountain, very old, waiting to tell the story one more time. This is what Adventure Time is about. Not the adventures exactly, though the adventures are wonderful. About what makes you want to come home from the adventure. About what you are protecting when you pick up the sword. About the 1,000-year accumulation of specific joys that makes a person really a person, with depth and weight and history, rather than just a function or a power level or a narrative role. The world of Ooh is built on the ruins of ours, and it is more alive than anything in its history was. It is strange and dangerous and full of things that want to end it. And it is also, in every corner and candy-coated alley and Ice Mountain and Vampire Queen's music cave, profoundly worth defending. Because somebody made it sweet, and somebody keeps playing music in it. And that, in the end, is enough. Thank you so much for spending this time in the world of Ooh with me. If you made it this far, you know how deep this show goes and how much there is still to explore. Drop a comment telling me which character's lore hit you hardest, and make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next deep dive. There are so many more stories here, and we are just getting started. Adventure Time, at its core, told us something simple wrapped in something immense. The world ended, and beauty came after. Your past does not have to be the whole story. The candy grows in the ruins. The song still carries even when the singer is afraid. That might be the most radical thing a cartoon ever said. Sleep well, wherever you are watching from. End of script. Extended Deep Dive Section 1, The Ruins Beneath Ooh. Expanded. Go back to the Mushroom War for a moment. Not to the event itself, we have already walked through the event, but to what it felt like to survive it. Because Adventure Time is, among everything else it is, a show about survivors, and the texture of survival matters as much as the fact of it. Consider what it means to be Simon Petrikov in the immediate aftermath. He is a scholar. His life before the crown was built around careful study, around the patient examination of objects and documents, around the slow accumulation of knowledge about things that had happened long before he was born. He was trained to make sense of the past, to find the thread of meaning running through material culture, to hold fragments of evidence and reason toward conclusions about what produced them. And then the world around him becomes exactly the kind of catastrophe that, in his professional life, he would have studied from a safe historical distance. The war he read about in books, the wars he read about, the great catastrophic wars of human history, the ones that produced the ruins he spent his career excavating, becomes the world he is living in. The before-photograph world and the after-photograph world collapse into the same moment, and he is in both of them, and he is also losing his mind. The crown takes things from Simon in a specific order, and the order matters. It takes the recent things first, the latest memories, the freshest accumulations, the things he has most recently added to his sense of himself. This is why Betty is among the first things he begins to lose access to, not because she matters least, but because she is the most recent chapter of who he is. The older memories, childhood, early education, the foundational sense of self linger longer. This is why he remembers the Cheers theme in the Simon and Marcy flashback, even when so much else is going. It is old enough, deeply enough embedded, to have survived what the crown has taken so far. Marceline is 8 or 9 years old when she meets Simon, and this is not a coincidence of timing in the narrative sense. It is the result of years of wandering through the post-war landscape during which Simon must have encountered many people and many situations and many opportunities for connection that the show does not have time to document. He did not stumble across Marceline by accident in the sense that fate arranged their meeting. He stumbled across her because he was a person walking through a ruined world looking for other living things, the way survivors do. And she was a child alone in the wreckage, the way too many children were in those years. The specific act of finding her the stuffed toy is important and deserves more attention than it typically gets. Simon was not simply giving her a toy. He was giving her something that said, "I see that you are a child, and children need things to hold." He was affirming, in the language of action, that the fact of her childhood was real and mattered even in the middle of an apocalypse. He could have found food or shelter or a weapon. He found something soft for a small person to hold on to. This is the whole of who Simon Petrikov is, compressed into a single gesture. Hambo, that stuffed pink elephant, travels with Marceline for centuries. When it is eventually taken from her by a boyfriend who sells it to a witch as payment for a favor, the loss hits her the way the loss of the toy itself would not hit most adults. Because Hambo is not simply a toy, it is the physical anchor of the memory of Simon Petrikov as he was before the crown. Simon Petrikov as someone who found something soft for her to hold. Every time she held Hambo, she was, in some sense, holding that version of him. The version that the crown was in the process of erasing. The version she spent 1,000 years knowing was still in there somewhere beneath the Ice King's blue skin and long nose and meandering obsessions. Princess Bubblegum gets Hambo back for her. In the episode Sky Witch, Bubblegum trades her most prized possession, the t-shirt Marceline threw to her from a concert stage, the one she has been keeping for decades, for Hambo, giving it to the Sky Witch Maja who has the stuffed elephant. This exchange is the show's quietest declaration of what these two beings are to each other. The thing Bubblegum has been keeping closest to herself for years, the object that most represents what she values and cannot quite name, she trades for the thing that represents the same value to Marceline. She gives up her most precious object so Marceline can have hers back. She does not tell Marceline what she traded. She just gives Marceline back the elephant. The ruins that Ooh is built on are not only physical, they are emotional. They are the accumulated weight of what was lost and what was carried forward. Every person in the show who is old enough to remember the war, Marceline, Simon, the land itself in some sense, is walking through their present while simultaneously navigating the terrain of that past. The ruins are always present. They are the floor beneath everything. And the show asks you to hold the devastation and the beauty simultaneously. The Candy Kingdom is built on toxic waste and the bodies of the people who tried to survive what the bomb produced. It is also genuinely beautiful, genuinely sweet, genuinely full of beings who love each other and celebrate and dance and are afraid of ghosts and need to be held when they are frightened. Both things are true, the ruins and the candy above them, the death and the life it made possible. This coexistence is the show's central aesthetic. It is what makes Adventure Time feel different from other post-apocalyptic fiction, which tends to choose between the devastation and the hope rather than insisting that both exist in the same frame. Adventure Time insists. The colors are bright, and the music is bouncy, and the grass is green, and underneath the grass there is the evidence of everything that was destroyed, and both of these facts are simultaneously, insistently true. The Ice Kingdom is built on top of whatever Simon wandered into when the crown finished its work on him and he stopped being able to go anywhere else. The snow and ice he generates are not simply magical, they are an expression of his condition, of what the crown has made of his temperature and his metabolism and his relationship to warmth. He made a kingdom out of his own damage. He rules over it with the chaotic, lonely authority of someone who has no other context for what authority should feel like. His penguins are the only beings he consistently treats with something like gentleness. They do not need him to be Simon. They just need him to be there, and being there is something even the Ice King can do. There is a ruined house visible in some shots of the Ice Kingdom's outer regions. A house from the pre-war world, preserved by the cold, its windows still roughly intact, the shape of domestic life still legible in its structure. It sits in the snow near the Ice King's palace like a reminder of what existed before him, of the world he wandered into rather than the one he made. Simon Petrikov, who was a scholar of old houses and old objects, built his kingdom next door to one. He does not know why. The crown has taken the reason. But the house is still there, and sometimes, presumably, he looks at it. The land of Oo is littered with these kinds of artifacts. The show plants them deliberately a stop sign emerging from a hillside, a piece of pre-war technology repurposed into something decorative, a ruined highway overpass visible in the distance of an establishing shot. They are not emphasized. They are not pointed out. They are just there, in the background of a world that has moved on from what produced them, still present in the way that the past is always present, even when we stop looking at it. Adventure Time builds its world the way actual worlds are built, accretively, with the new growing over and around and through the old always visible to anyone who knows what to look for. Extended Deep Dive Section 2. The Ice Crown's full history, expanded. The Ice Crown is older than Simon Petrikov by approximately 65 million years. The episode Evergreen, from Season 6, drops into the deep prehistoric past of the show's cosmology and gives us the origin of the crown in full. It is one of the most extraordinary episodes of the series because of what it does with the frame. It places the emotional mechanics of the Simon Petrikov story inside a context so vast that you almost cannot hold both scales in your mind at once, and then it asks you to hold them anyway, because the scales are the point. Evergreen is a wizard. He lives in the age of the dinosaurs, in a world that is lush and prehistoric, and inhabited by creatures that humans, in Simon's time and in Finn's time, would know only from fossils. Evergreen is brilliant, arrogant in the way that brilliance tends to produce arrogance when there is not enough humility in the immediate environment to balance it, and he is genuinely frightened. A catalyst comet is incoming. Not the green comet that brought the Lich's soul, but a different one, a comet that, if it strikes Earth, will cause an extinction event of the kind that, historically, it did cause. The age of the dinosaurs ends because of exactly this kind of comet. Evergreen knows this is coming. He has a plan. He is building a crown that will grant a wish, the right wish, the specific wish that will stop the comet, save the dinosaurs, save the world. He has engineered the crown to grant this wish when the right person puts it on and wishes for it. He has the wish. He has the specifications. He needs a wearer at the right moment. His apprentice is Gunther. Not the Ice King's penguin Gunther, a different Gunther, an ice elephant in the prehistoric period, devoted to Evergreen with the specific devotion that apprentices develop for mentors they both revere and cannot quite satisfy. Gunther tries, across the episode, to do what Evergreen needs. He is not good enough. He is not finished enough. He makes mistakes that Evergreen corrects with impatience rather than encouragement. The comet comes. Evergreen is not in position to put on the crown himself. Gunther is there. Gunther puts on the crown. The crown, as we now know, does not grant the wish of whoever built it. It grants the deepest wish of whoever wears it. And Gunther's deepest wish, in that moment of contact with the crown after years of being told he is not enough, years of trying to be what his mentor needs and failing, years of wanting to please and being found wanting, is to be Evergreen. To have Evergreen's power, Evergreen's authority, Evergreen's presence in the world, the crown grants it. Gunther becomes a chaotic imitation of Evergreen, ice-powered and erratic, and entirely unhelpful in the immediate crisis. The comet strikes, the dinosaurs begin their extinction, and the crown floats off through history, carrying the deep imprint of Gunther, who wanted to be Evergreen, waiting for the next wearer. Every Ice King who has ever worn the crown has become, essentially, a version of this same pattern. The crown does not take the wearer and turn them into an ice wizard in a neutral sense. It takes the wearer and turns them into something that rhymes with Gunther, rhyming with Evergreen. The specific distortions of the Ice King's personality, the desperate loneliness, the wanting to be valued, the erratic use of power, the inability to be what the people around him need. All of these rhyme with the template the crown was working from 65 million years ago. Simon Petrikov, wearing the crown for 1,000 years, became a version of this pattern. His specific qualities, his genuine warmth and intelligence, his orientation toward care were not entirely erased. They were distorted. The warmth became the desperate want for companionship expressed as princess kidnapping. The intelligence survived in fragments, appearing in moments of lucidity before the crown pulled him back under. The care for Marcelin persisted as an ache without a name, a sense that there was something important he was forgetting and had been forgetting for a very long time. The crown is an artifact of trauma, in the deepest possible sense. It was built in a moment of existential fear, programmed with a specific desire, and then, at the crucial moment, used by the wrong person in the wrong state. Every wearer since has been shaped by the crown's memory of that wrong use. Every wearer since has been, in some sense, Gunther the one who wanted something they were not supposed to want, and had it granted in a way that helped no one. Betty's attempt to fix Simon is, among other things, an attempt to interrupt this 65 million year pattern. She is trying to extract Simon from the crown's template to restore what the crown has been layering over. She cannot do this in any direct way because the crown's grip on Simon is also the thing keeping him alive. The ice magic has sustained his biology so long that removing it without an alternative substrate would kill him. She is trying to find a way to remove the template without removing the foundation. This is, as we might note, an engineering problem of nearly impossible complexity. Betty throws herself at it anyway. The crown's restoration inside Golb's stomach, its return to primal form, is a kind of temporal reset for the artifact. Golb's digestive process strips things to their essential nature, and the crown's essential nature is the wishing mechanism, uncorrupted by 65 million years of bad use. It becomes, again, what Evergreen built it to be, a device for granting the truest, deepest wish of whoever wears it. The wish it was always supposed to grant, Evergreen's wish to save the world, has never been made correctly. What is made instead inside Golb is Betty's wish, to protect Simon. The crown grants it in the only way it can, and the pattern finally, at last, breaks. The Ice Thingdom, under Gunther now Ice Thing, is something new. The penguin who absorbed the crown is not Gunther the Ice Elephant, and is not Simon Petrikov, and is not the Ice King. It is whatever Gunther the penguin is, underneath the years of being a penguin, the years of being Orgalorg compressed into a small body and a restricted identity. The crown's template hits differently in a being this specific and this strange. What emerges is not the familiar lonely pattern. It is something genuinely new, shaped by its particular history, into a ruler who is unlike any of the crown's previous hosts. The Ice Thingdom is administered, one imagines, in a manner somewhat difficult to predict. But Turtle Princess seems happy. That may be the best available metric. Extended Deep Dive Section 3. Marcelin's Vampires. Expanded. The vampire hunting arc of Marceline's history is told in fragments across the series, and most directly in the miniseries Stakes, and it is worth spending additional time with because it contains some of the show's most careful mythology about what power means and what it costs. The vampires of the post-Mushroom War landscape are not the vampires of pre-war folklore. They are ooze vampires, shaped by the same mutagenic transformation that shaped everything else in the New World, bearing the traditional qualities of the creature in modified form, each one also a distinct entity with particular abilities that reflect their particular nature. This is crucial to understanding what Marceline accumulates across her years of hunting them. The Fool is the first. A vampire whose power manifests as hypnosis, the ability to control perception, to make others see what the Fool wants them to see rather than what is actually present. This is a power that resonates with a certain kind of social manipulation, the ability to manage how others experience you, and the Fool's character reflects this, erratic, performative, operating through misdirection. Marceline fights it and absorbs its power. Hypnosis becomes part of her toolkit. She gains the ability to direct attention, to cloud perception, to make herself less visible to the things that are looking for her. The Empress is more dangerous and more personal. She is an ancient vampire who has survived by knowing exactly what people need and providing it, specifically, seductively, until they are dependent enough that she can take what she actually wants. The Empress can turn herself invisible. She has been the most persistent threat to the human communities Marceline is trying to protect, because she is patient in the way that predators who hunt through relationship rather than force are patient, willing to wait, to build trust, to establish connection before revealing the cost of that connection. Marceline fights her and absorbs her power. Invisibility, the ability to be present without being seen. The Hierophant is a more formal kind of vampire. Associated in the show's visual language with tradition and authority, a creature that presents itself as an institution rather than an individual, that has accumulated the particular power of something that has been taken for granted for a very long time. The Hierophant can shapeshift, can become other things, can wear different faces. Marceline fights it. She gains shapeshifting, the ability to become other forms, other creatures, other shapes. The Moon is the oldest of the vampires she fights before the Vampire King, ancient in the way that something is ancient when it has been around long enough to have forgotten when it began. The Moon is associated with healing, with regeneration, with the cyclical quality of something that persists through damage by restoring itself. Marceline fights the Moon and absorbs its healing factor, the ability to recover from injuries that would kill most beings, the accelerated regeneration that makes her essentially unkillable unless specific conditions are met. Each of these vampires is defeated by Marceline, and each defeat adds something to what she is. She is not simply accumulating abilities in a mechanical sense. She is absorbing the essential qualities of ancient beings, making them part of her own nature, integrating them into herself. This changes her in ways that are not fully explored in the show but are implied. 1,000 years of integration, of having these essences as part of herself, has shaped who she is at a level below the surface personality. She is a vampire who is also partially the Fool, partially the Empress, partially the Hierophant, partially the Moon. She has absorbed centuries of these beings' accumulated natures. The Vampire King himself is the final confrontation in stakes and the climax of this entire arc. He is enormous and ancient and the most powerful vampire she has ever encountered, and the fight with him is real and dangerous. She kills him, and in the process of killing him, of defeating the Vampire King, the most powerful vampire in the world, she earns the title. She did not choose to be the Vampire Queen. The title is conferred by the logic of what she did. She killed the king. She is, therefore, by the internal rules of the system, the queen, and she got bitten in the fight with the Vampire King. In the moment before she destroyed him, he bit her. The bite from the Vampire King is different from exposure to the other vampires. Those encounters changed her incrementally, additive rather than transformative. The Vampire King's bite is a direct conversion. It is the founding act of vampire propagation, the most fundamental expression of what a Vampire King can do, and against Marceline's half-demon biology, it takes in a way it would not take against a fully human target. She becomes a vampire. The powers she already had become permanently hers through the vampiric transformation rather than being held in some intermediate state. She gains the additional vulnerabilities direct sunlight, the specific need for the color red rather than other forms of nutrition. She becomes the thing she has been fighting, in the particular cruel irony that defines a great deal of what happens to Marceline across her life. In Stakes, when she asks Bubblegum to extract the vampire essence, she is asking for the reversal of this transformation. She wants to know what mortality feels like, wants to understand what it means to be something that will end. This is a genuinely interesting desire for someone who has spent 1,000 years as something that does not, under most circumstances, end. The want for finitude. The curiosity about what it means to have a natural limit. But the essences that come back freed from her body, seeking new hosts, are not simply powers anymore. They are the distinct souls of the 5 vampires she killed and absorbed. The Fool, the Empress, the Hierophant, the Moon, the Vampire King. 5 entities, freed, each of them needing to be defeated again in whatever form they manage to take. And the Vampire King's essence, the oldest and most powerful, is the deepest and most personal of these reckonings. The Vampire King's essence, when Marceline finally confronts it, tries to offer her something, a version of the self that would be free of the specific tensions and complications that have defined her existence. An easier identity, one that does not carry all of this weight. She rejects it. She takes back what is hers. She chooses to be what she is, all of it, the demon heritage and the vampire transformation, and the 1,000 years of accumulated experience, and the specific, difficult, irreplaceable self that has been built across all of that. She does not want to be simpler. She wants to be herself. This is, as noted, one of the show's most sophisticated character resolutions. It is also deeply counterintuitive as a narrative move. Most stories about someone who has been transformed against their will into something monstrous end with the restoration of what they were before the transformation. The transformation is the problem, and the problem gets solved, and the person goes back to what they were. Adventure Time does not do this. It says, you are not going back. You are not being restored. You are being given the choice to claim what you are, to make it yours instead of something that happened to you. And the claiming makes the difference. Marceline's vampiric nature is hers. She made it hers by choosing it consciously with her eyes open. And in that choice, the 1,000 years of being defined by it became something different, not something done to her, but something she has been. Extended Deep Dive Section 4, The Candy Kingdom's Dark History, expanded. The Candy Kingdom is the most visible symbol of civilization in Adventure Time's OO, and it contains, within its sweet and glittering exterior, a history that is considerably darker than its presentation suggests. We have discussed the Gumbald incident, the uncle who tried to lobotomize his niece, the juice that hit him instead, the decision Bubblegum made to leave her created family in a chemically altered state because it was convenient. But the Candy Kingdom's darkness runs deeper than this single early incident. It has been a pattern across 8 centuries of governance, a recurring theme in how Bubblegum relates to the challenge of power. The Rattleballs are one of the clearest examples. Bubblegum created an elite police force, the Rattleballs, composed of robotic knights, highly skilled and highly lethal, designed to maintain order within the Candy Kingdom. They were effective. They were also, as Bubblegum eventually discovered, dramatically excessive in their methods. Their definition of maintaining order involved a level of force that was disproportionate to the situations they encountered. They were, in short, a police force whose violence exceeded what the population needed and was causing harm. Bubblegum's response to this discovery was to destroy them, not to reform the system, not to retrain or restructure or build in accountability. To simply eliminate the force she had created, she executed the Rattleballs rather than fixing what was wrong with them, except for a single Rattleball who escaped the purge and has been hiding in the wilderness ever since, living by his warrior code in isolation because his society was destroyed and he survived by chance. When Finn encounters this Rattleball in Rattleball, the episode illuminates something important about Bubblegum's governance. She creates things, and then, when those things develop in ways she did not intend, she does not engage with the complexity she produced. She removes it. This is not a minor character flaw in someone who runs a civilization. It is a structural problem in how she relates to the consequences of her power. The surveillance state that develops in the 5th season is another expression of this pattern. Following a near-death experience, Bubblegum begins installing cameras throughout the Candy Kingdom. She does not announce this to her citizens. She does not ask their consent. She decides that monitoring them is what they need for their safety and implements it without discussion. When the cameras are discovered, the response within the kingdom is complicated. Some citizens feel protected by the knowledge that they are being watched. Others feel violated by the absence of privacy, and the whole thing reveals a civic relationship that has been built on paternalism so thorough that the people inside it have not fully developed the language to disagree with it. The tracking chips are even more extreme. In the same period, bubblegum implants tracking chips in every Candy Kingdom citizen without informing them of this. The chips allow her to locate every person in the kingdom at all times. She frames this to herself, presumably, as a protective measure. She can find them if they are in danger, she can account for all her citizens, she can maintain the comprehensive knowledge of her population's whereabouts that feels, from her position, like responsible governance. From their position, if they knew about it, it would feel like something else entirely. These choices are not presented by the show as the behavior of a villain. They are presented as the behavior of someone who genuinely cares about the people in her care and has convinced herself that the level of control she exercises is the level required for them to be safe. This is a distinction the show maintains carefully. Bubblegum is not malevolent. She is not exercising power to harm. She is exercising power in ways that harm because she has not fully reckoned with the difference between caring about people and managing them. The election that removes her from power in Season 6 is, in retrospect, the Candy Kingdom's democratic self-correction. The people she has made somewhat credulous and somewhat dependent because she designed them that way, at the beginning, because she wanted people she could manage, use the democratic tool she gave them to choose someone other than her. The King of Ooh, a charlatan and a fraud, wins the election because he offers something she has not offered, the experience of being chosen rather than managed. Even people who have been made somewhat simple can feel the difference between a ruler who wants them to be safe and a ruler who acts like they matter. She lets it happen. She does not intervene, does not use her considerable power to prevent the election's outcome, does not quietly undermine the results. She leaves. She goes to her laboratory and she keeps working, and she watches what happens when her management is removed. What happens is predictable. The King of Ooh is incompetent and somewhat corrupt, and the Candy Kingdom suffers from the absence of Bubblegum's genuine competence. But the process of watching it matters more than the outcome. She learns something from watching it that she could not have learned any other way. That the Candy people, even somewhat simple and somewhat dependent, have the capacity to recognize when something is wrong and to act on that recognition. She did not give them that capacity. It was always there. When she returns to power, something is slightly different. Not fixed, she is still herself, still inclined toward control, still convinced, usually, that she knows best, but slightly different, slightly more willing to be in the room with the mess rather than organizing the mess away before anyone has to experience it. The Candy Kingdom's relationship with dark magic is another dimension of its history that the show touches on carefully. Peppermint Butler, the earnest candy servant who accompanies Princess Bubblegum throughout the series, is revealed across multiple episodes to have a significant investment in dark magic, occultism, demonic dealings, and the kind of occult knowledge that is generally considered inappropriate for candy servants to have. He knows Hunson Abadir. He has conducted rituals. He has made deals. He is, beneath the helpful surface, something considerably stranger and darker than his role would suggest. The show never fully explains why Peppermint Butler has this dimension, or how Bubblegum relates to it, or whether she knows. The implication seems to be that she knows at some level and has chosen to not investigate too thoroughly, because Peppermint Butler is useful and trustworthy, and the dark magic is not currently causing problems. This is perhaps the most Bubblegum choice the show implies, without stating. The management of information, the decision about what to know and what to leave unexamined, because full knowledge sometimes requires responses that are inconvenient. Peppermint Butler eventually becomes the ruler of the Candy Kingdom in the Distant Lands period. How this happened, exactly, is not fully explained. A time card in Together Again simply shows him as the current ruler. Given everything we know about his background, this implies a kind of patience and long-game strategy that the show has been seeding across a decade. Peppermint Butler waited. He served faithfully. He maintained his strange parallel life in the occult, and eventually he was in a position step into authority. Whether this was always the plan is a question the show leaves genuinely open. Extended Deep Dive Section 5. The Cosmic Architecture Elementals, Comets, and the Balance of Forces. Expanded. Adventure Time's cosmological structure is one of the most elaborate and carefully maintained in animated television, and it is worth stepping back from the individual characters to look at the architecture itself, the framework within which all of these stories are happening. The world of Ooh has, at its foundation, an elemental system. 4 elements: fire, ice, candy, and slime, each represented by a specific elemental force that reincarnates across time, always present, always in a particular body somewhere in the world. The current elementals at the time of the main series are Flame Princess, Fire, Ice King, Simon, Ice, via the Crown's corruption, Princess Bubblegum, Candy, and Slime, Princess Slime. Previous and future elementals are referenced and occasionally glimpsed. The elemental system is ancient, predating the Mushroom War, predating Simon and Marcy, predating the era of the great hero Billy. It is a structural feature of the world, a cosmological fact, the same way gravity is a physical fact. The elements need representatives. The representatives change, die, are reincarnated, emerge into new bodies with the same essential function. The candy elemental has always existed in some form. There was a candy elemental before Bubblegum. There will be a candy elemental after her. This reframes Bubblegum significantly. She is not simply a person who happens to rule the Candy Kingdom. She is the current expression of a cosmic principle tied to sweetness and creation, and the specific kind of warmth that candy represents in the show's symbolic language. The Candy Kingdom is not just the work of one very intelligent person's very long life. It is the expression of an elemental force working through the medium of that person. The sweetness of the Candy Kingdom is not incidental. It is the elemental principle of candy made architectural. The same is true for Flame Princess, who is the fire elemental, the embodiment of Flame's specific qualities, destruction and warmth and light, and the capacity for both devastation and comfort in different circumstances. The Flame Kingdom under Flame Princess is not simply a hot place. It is fire's essential nature given governance and shape, and the particular personality of the specific person currently embodying it. Her relationship with Finn, which the show takes seriously as a real and meaningful connection between two people who genuinely care about each other and who are also genuinely incompatible in specific and painful ways, is shaped by this. Flame Princess is, among other things, a being of tremendous destructive potential that she is always in the process of learning to manage. Her growth across her arc is inseparable from her growth in understanding what she is. The Catalyst comets add another layer to this cosmological structure. Every 1,000 years or so, a comet arrives. It carries something, an agent of change, an embodiment of some principle, something that will reshape the world in some significant way. The Lich arrived in a green comet 65 million years ago. Finn's soul arrived in a blue comet after the Mushroom War. Orgolorg attempted to absorb a comet in the ancient past of the Martian civilizations. Each arrival has produced something new in the world, some transformation or introduction that changed the trajectory of what came after. The Martian civilizations, Grobgob-Globgrod and their predecessors, the ancient kings of Mars who have been watching Earth's development for longer than most of Ooh's current residents have existed, are another piece of the cosmological architecture. Mars is a civilization that developed earlier and differently from Earth's, producing beings of immense power and longevity who have watched Earth's development with the interest of neighbors who are aware that what happens next door can affect them. Grobgob-Globgrod sacrificed themselves to redirect a comet toward Earth. They died to ensure that the comet they believed was the Catalyst comet reached Earth on schedule because they understood the Catalyst comet cycle and believed the disruption of that cycle would be catastrophic. They were wrong about which comet it was, as it turns out. The comet was Martin Mertens' spacecraft. The sacrifice was real, but the identification was incorrect. The Martians died for an error, which is one of the more darkly comic moments in the show's mythology. Their sacrifice was genuine. Their information was wrong. The universe did not give them a pass on the error because the intention was good. The actual Catalyst comet arrived separately and was the purple entity that spoke to Finn in the 6th season finale. It had been embodying things across its many arrivals, accumulating experience and perspective, and the specific kind of cosmological wisdom that comes from being an ancient intelligent force that has been cycling through forms for millions of years. It offered Finn transcendence and was turned down, which may be an unprecedented outcome in its long history of arriving on Earth and offering transformations to the beings it encountered. The comet had never met anyone who would rather stay. The cosmic owl is another element of the cosmological structure, occupying a different function from Prismo but in the same general territory of beings, who observe and sometimes interact with the structure of reality. The cosmic owl appears in prophetic dreams. It does not cause the events it appears to predict, it witnesses them in a form that predates their physical occurrence and transmits that witnessing to whatever dreamer it visits. It cannot interfere with what it sees. It can only be present for it, which is its own kind of witness-bearing. Its friendship with Prismo is one of the show's background relationships, two ancient beings who occupy somewhat similar positions in the cosmological architecture, both observing, both bound by rules about what they can do, both finding in each other a companionship that the structure of their roles makes otherwise nearly impossible. They watch movies together in the time room. The cosmic owl, who has seen every significant event in history before it happened, watching movies with the Wishmaster, who has seen everything from his wall of screens. What they talk about during these visits, the show leaves to imagination. Life and death are also named forces in the show's cosmology, actual entities, beings who embody these principles, the way the elementals embody fire and ice and candy and slime. Death runs the dead worlds, a collection of afterlife dimensions, each reflecting some principle of what the dead who arrived there believed about what came after. Life manages the process of reincarnation, creating new bodies from clay in her underwater garden for the souls that have cycled through enough to begin again. The Dead World sequence in Together Again is the most extended look at this system. Finn arrives in the afterlife when he dies on a distant planet and navigates through several layers of it. The afterlife is not a single place, it is many places, differentiated by something like cultural memory or individual belief, or perhaps just by the specific qualities the souls who arrive there carry. There are peaceful ones and difficult ones and strange ones, all of them managed somehow by the broad system that death oversees. This cosmological architecture, elementals, comets, cosmic observers, life and death as named principles with embodied representatives, the time room at the center of the multiverse, managing wishes across all possible timelines, is held together by something the show never fully names but repeatedly gestures toward, a kind of balance. Not a forced balance, not a mechanical equilibrium, but the ongoing, imperfect, always being renegotiated balance that emerges from having many enormous forces present in the same space, and somehow not destroying everything. The Lich is contained by Sweet Pea. Golb is redirected by Betty. The elementals keep their domains without extinguishing each other. The catalyst comets arrive and produce change without ending everything they touch. The balance is not guaranteed. The show makes this clear across every season. There is no cosmic force maintaining the balance, except the ongoing choices of the beings within the system. Prismo grants wishes because the rules require it, but whether those wishes produce something good or something terrible depends entirely on the wishers and the specific form their desires take. The elementals maintain their kingdoms but occasionally slip into extremity. The episode Elements shows what happens when the elementals lose control and their principles begin consuming everything around them. Fire takes over, ice takes over, candy takes over, slime takes over. The entire land becomes one element, suffocating everything else, and only the specific intervention of one particular elemental being in a blue creature form can restore the diversity. The balance is the work of everyone in the system, always, all the time. No one gets to stop doing this work because someone else will handle it. The heroes of Adventure Time are not heroes because they possess unique capabilities that give them special responsibility. They are heroes because they keep showing up to the ongoing work of being present in a world that requires presence and care, and the willingness to deal with whatever the current crisis is, however large or small. Extended Deep Dive Section 6. BMO, the small being at the center of everything, expanded. BMO is easy to underestimate. This is intentional. BMO is designed to read as the small, sweet, somewhat confused robot companion, endearing, occasionally useful, perpetually innocent in the way of a child who has not yet encountered everything the world contains and approaches each new encounter with the unguarded openness of someone for whom experience has not yet taught caution. BMO plays video games. BMO plays pretend, giving itself roles in elaborate self-directed stories when alone in the treehouse. BMO is, in the emotional texture of the main series, the hearth, the thing you come back to, the thing that is always at home, the warmth at the center of the domestic world. But BMO is also, as the Distant Land special BMO reveals, significantly more than this. BMO's origin is on a generation ship, a spacecraft that left Earth before or during the Mushroom War, carrying a population that had decided to leave rather than wait for the outcome of a global catastrophe. The ship was built by a being called Mo, the creator of all the MOs, a family of robots of varying sizes and capacities, each built for a specific purpose, all of them Mo's children in whatever sense a maker can be parent to the maid. BMO was built to be given to a child. Mo built BMO with the specific intention of giving it to someone who needed it, and in the generation ship's context, in the context of a ship full of people who had fled a catastrophic war and were trying to maintain community and sanity and the will to continue across the void between one world and possibly another, the idea of a small robot companion for a child carries more weight than it does in a peaceful context. BMO was built for comfort, for presence, for the specific kind of warmth that comes from having something always there that knows your name and is glad to see you. BMO ended up on Earth. The specifics of how are complicated, and the special handles them with the oblique approach that the show often uses for its deepest lore, enough to understand the shape of it, not enough to leave no room for imagination. What matters is that BMO is found in a forest by Finn and Jake at some point before the main series begins, and they bring it home, and it becomes the third resident of the treehouse, and 1,000 years later it is sitting on a mountain being the king of the land. The king of the land. Let that sit for a moment. The small robot that plays pretend and gets confused about pronouns and is afraid of the dark and sings songs to itself and plays video games, that being 1,000 years after Finn and Jake, is the king of whatever Ooh has become, the most beloved, the most trusted, the most enduring, the one that Shermie and Beth seek out when they want to know the old stories. BMO outlived everyone, not because BMO is particularly powerful or cosmologically significant in the ways the other characters are cosmologically significant. BMO outlived everyone because BMO is a robot, and robots, maintained properly or simply built durably enough, do not die the way organic beings die. BMO continued. The world changed around it. The people it loved passed through it and moved on. And BMO remained, carrying the memories, available to tell the story to whoever came looking. The Time Adventure song is BMO's contribution to the finale, and it is worth sitting with the specific content of the song's lyrics, which are about how the past is still reachable even after the present has moved beyond it, how the moments we shared with people are not lost even when the people are gone. The show does not make explicit the connection between BMO's origin, a being built to comfort someone who needed it, and this particular song. It does not need to. BMO sings about love and time because love and time are what BMO has been navigating for its entire existence. In the company of people it will inevitably outlast. The song works against Golb because harmony is what Golb cannot absorb. And BMO's song is harmony in its most fundamental sense, not musical harmony specifically, but the alignment of genuine feeling with genuine expression. BMO means what it sings. The whole of Ooh means it when they join in. And the alignment of all of that genuine meaning in the same direction at the same moment produces something that chaos cannot disorder. BMO began as a companion for a child who needed comfort. It ends as the being whose song held the world together, whose kingdom preserves the stories, whose small mechanical existence spans the entire span of Ooh from its formation to its future. The most important character in Adventure Time might be the smallest. The one who was never trying to be important, the one who was just trying to be there. Extended Deep Dive Section 7. The finale's emotional core expanded. The goodbye that Adventure Time offers its audience is distributed across many moments, many episodes, many small resolutions that accumulate into something that feels, if you have been watching for a long time, like the end of a very long and very good dream. There is the moment when Marceline and Bubblegum finally get to be what they are to each other. Not dramatically, not in a moment of revelation or confession or the kind of big scene that lesser storytelling would give them. It happens in the middle of other things, in the flow of events, because that is how things happen in real life. You are dealing with a monster, and then also you are telling someone you love them. The crisis and the tenderness coexist because they always do. There is the moment when Simon, restored, looks at Marceline. He does not have the 1,000 years of the Ice King's history to process those years happen to something that was using his body, and he has access to them in some form, but they are not his in the same way that his memories before the crown are his. What he has is the knowledge that Marceline is here, that she has been here this whole time, that she kept everything he gave her, including the memory of who he was. There is an entire conversation in that look that the show does not translate into dialogue because it does not need to. There is Fern's end. Fern, the being made of Finn's discarded grass sword, a separate consciousness that arose from magical material and had to spend its entire existence grappling with not being Finn, with being an entity that looks like Finn and carries Finn's memories but is not Finn and can never be Finn and does not know quite what it is instead. Fern's arc is about the specific suffering of being defined by what you are not, and the show handles it with real care, not making Fern a villain, not making his resentment unreasonable, just showing the genuine tragedy of a consciousness that could not quite find the terms for its own existence. He dies fighting. He goes down while everyone else is occupied with Golb, absorbed back into the grass that made him, and the show gives this moment exactly as much weight as it deserves, which is significant but not more than significant. Fern mattered. His ending matters. And what follows from it matters most. Finn and Jake plant his seedling. The treehouse grows from it. Fern is literally in the walls of the home they rebuild, part of the structure, constitutive of the space they occupy. This is exactly the kind of ending the show has always offered its losses. Not resolution in the sense of the pain being removed, but transformation in the sense of the loss becoming something that persists in a different form. Fern is gone, and Fern is the treehouse. Simon is free, and Betty is gone. Marceline is alone, and Marceline has bubblegum. The endings are not clean. They are good in the way that real endings are good when they are good with complexity intact, with the grief and the gratitude occupying the same space. Jake's death, which happens off-screen between the series and the specials, is handled in Together Again, with tremendous respect for the audience's relationship with this character. The show does not show us Jake dying because to show it would be to make the death the thing, and the death is not the thing. What matters is what Jake was while he was alive, and what he left behind when he went. What he left behind is everything: 5 children, a world he loved, a brother who would cross the afterlife to find him, a life so thoroughly and warmly lived that 1,000 years later people are still hearing stories about it. In the afterlife, Jake has been working. Of course he has. He found something that needed doing, and he did it, a project to improve the system for the dead, to make the afterlife less hostile and more livable for the souls who arrive there. This is so perfectly Jake that it almost functions as a character summary. Given unlimited time in a space that needs improvement, Jake the dog will find the project and do it thoroughly, probably while also finding the local equivalent of good food and making friends with everyone. Finn and Jake do one last adventure together. The shape of it follows the shape of all their adventures. Something is wrong. They go, deal with it. It is more complicated than expected. They figure it out together. It is resolved. The template unchanged. The friendship unchanged. The fundamental quality of what they are to each other unchanged by death or time or the specific cosmological context of the afterlife. They are still Finn and Jake. They always will be. Then they move on into whatever comes after the afterlife. The show does not speculate about this. It simply shows them going together and lets you imagine what going together might mean when you have been companions across multiple lifetimes and will be companions in whatever comes next. The very last image the main series offers is the beach, the human ships arriving, Finn standing there, the future coming toward him in the form of more of his kind, more of the species that built and destroyed and built again, arriving in the world that was made from their destruction, and that is now welcoming them back. It is an ambivalent image, hopeful and complicated simultaneously, the way any image of humanity returning to a world they once ruined should be. But Finn is there, and he is glad. And that gladness, from a hero who has spent his whole life oriented toward good, who chose this specific world over transcendence, who is still here, and still present, and still looking at what comes next with open eyes that gladness is the show's final word on whether any of this was worth it. It was Extended Deep Dive Section 8, What the Show Taught Us About Being Alive. Expanded. Adventure Time ran for a decade, and across that decade it taught things that most entertainment aimed at children does not attempt to teach, and it taught them without ever making the teaching feel like a lesson. It embedded the wisdom in the story and trusted the audience to find it. The first thing is about grief. The show is honest about grief in a way that children's entertainment rarely manages. It does not resolve grief. It does not give its characters a defined grieving period after which they emerge healed and ready for the next thing. Marceline has been grieving for 1,000 years, grieving the world that existed before the Mushroom War, grieving her mother, grieving Simon as Simon, grieving every person she has ever loved who could not live as long as she could. This grief is not what defines her, but it is present in her in the way that long grief is present in people who have carried it long enough to make peace with it without making it disappear. She can laugh and be funny and make music and love people while also carrying all of this. Both things exist in her simultaneously. The show taught this. Grief is not a problem to be solved. It is a weight to be carried, and the carrying changes over time. And eventually you develop the specific muscles for it, and those muscles become part of what you are. The second thing is about identity. The show returns to this theme across every character arc, always from a slightly different angle. Simon losing his identity to the crown, Marceline building her identity across 1,000 years of radical change. Bubblegum creating her identity from the raw material of what she emerged as, adding to it and modifying it across centuries. Jake discovering that his identity was shaped by an alien being's DNA and finding that this information does not change who he is. Fern trying to have an identity when every element of his existence is defined by being a copy of someone else's. The show taught this. Identity is not something you have. It is something you keep choosing. The crown can layer things on top of Simon's identity for 1,000 years, and when those layers are finally removed, Simon is still there. Not unchanged, no one is unchanged by 1,000 years, but recognizable, essentially himself. Identity persists through extraordinary amounts of pressure if the choices you make inside that pressure are consistently oriented toward what you actually are. The third thing is about love. The show depicts love in many forms: romantic, familial, platonic, the love of a community for its members, the love of a person for a place, the love of an ancient rosette for the humans who found it in a forest and made it part of their family. All of these forms are treated with equal weight. The love between Finn and Jake is not less important because it is not romantic. The love Simon has for Marceline is not less real because it is the love of a guardian for a child, rather than the love of equals. The love Betty has for Simon is not less significant because it eventually consumes her. The show taught this. Love is not one thing. It is many things, and all of them matter, and none of them is less real than the others because of what category they fall into. And love is the only force in Adventure Time's cosmological architecture that consistently produces something Golb cannot dissolve. Not love as a concept or a category-specific love, love between specific beings, love with weight and history, and the particular texture of two people who know each other well enough to hurt each other in specific ways, and who choose to be there anyway. The fourth thing is about power. The show is careful and consistent in its critique of power. Power tends toward overreach. Every powerful being in the show, at some point, uses their power in ways that harm rather than help, and every such instance is shown clearly enough that the audience can see it even when the powerful being cannot. Bubblegum's surveillance state, the Ice King's kidnapping, the Lich's extinction agenda, Golb's dissolving touch. Even Finn, whose power is more physical than cosmic, has moments where his heroic impulse tips into violence that is not appropriate to the situation. The show never excuses these instances. It shows them, acknowledges them, and watches to see whether the character will reckon with what they did. The show taught this. Having power does not make you right. Having good intentions does not make you right. Being the hero of the story does not protect you from making the villain's choice in a specific moment. The only thing that protects you from this is the ongoing, effortful work of paying attention to what your power is doing to the people around you, and being willing to change when what you see does not match what you intended. The fifth thing is about time. Not time travel. The show has time travel and handles it with characteristic creativity, but the experience of time from inside a life. The show's most consistent emotional through line is the acknowledgement that time passes and things change and people leave and the world keeps going. And this is neither a reason for despair nor a reason to hold on so tightly that you prevent anything from moving. The right relationship with time, the show suggests, is presence being fully in the specific moment you are in, loving the specific people you are with, building the specific things that matter to you right now, without spending so much energy on what is coming or what has already gone that you miss what is here. This is why Jake is the show's wisest character. Despite being one of its least cosmically significant, Jake is present. He is in whatever room he is in, with whatever people are there, doing whatever is being done, with the full quality of his attention and his warmth. He does not spend his time in the past or the future. He spends it where he is. This is harder than it sounds. This is arguably the most difficult thing the show suggests anyone should try to do. The Candy Kingdom is sweet, the music is still going, the pickles are fresh, the treehouse grows from Fern's seedling, Sweet Pea is kind, Simon is free, BMO remembers. The world ended 1,000 years ago and something beautiful grew in its place, and the people who lived in what grew were not always good and were sometimes extraordinary, and loved each other through things that would have been easier not to love through and kept going when stopping would have been more comfortable, and the story of it is worth telling and hearing and sitting with in the quiet before sleep. This is what Adventure Time was. This is what it did. And it is enough, and more than enough. And it will keep being enough for a long time. Thank you for being here for all of this. If you made it through the entire journey from the Mushroom War to Golb to everything after, then you understand something about this show that goes beyond what any quick summary can give you. Drop a comment with where you are in the world and what this show has meant to you. And subscribe so you are here for the next one. Sleep well wherever you are. The candy grows in the ruins. It always does. End of full script. Extended Deep Dive Section 9. The supporting world of Ooh and the characters who made it real. Expanded. Adventure Time's world is not just the major characters. It is a whole populated landscape, a civilization with depth in every direction, a place where even the characters who appear in a single episode carry the weight of living in a world with 1,000-year history beneath their feet. The supporting cast of Ooh is one of the show's most underappreciated achievements, because filling a world convincingly requires every person in it to feel like they have been somewhere and are going somewhere, even when the story only catches them for 11 minutes. Flame Princess. Finn's second major relationship, and the one the show handles with the most explicit attention to the complications of loving someone whose nature is fundamentally different from yours. She is the fire elemental, which means her emotional states are physically expressed in the world around her. When she is angry, things near her burn. When she is deeply upset, she can produce enough flame to cause geological damage. She is not in control of this in the way that a fully socialized person is in control of their responses. She is in the process of learning that control across her arc, and the learning is not linear and is not easy and involves setbacks of a specific and painful kind. Her upbringing is part of why. Her father, the Flame King, understood from early on that she was the fire elemental that she carried inside her, a power that, fully expressed, would be extremely difficult to manage. His response was to imprison her, not to help her develop the capacity to manage herself, but to remove her from any context in which the power might manifest. He kept her in a lantern, isolated, underdeveloped in every way, because the alternative seemed too risky. This is a specific kind of parental failure, the one that prioritizes fear of what the child might do over trust in who the child might become. Finn falls for Flame Princess at a distance first, having heard stories of her. He goes to see her, in her lantern, and what he finds is someone who has never been given the chance to be a person. She is raw and powerful and entirely unsocialized and full of something that wants to be more than what she has been allowed to be. He sees this. He is drawn to it, not the fire exactly, but the person underneath the fire, the someone who deserved more room than they have been given. Their relationship is genuine. The show does not play it as a mistake or an infatuation to be grown out of. It plays it as real, as the first romantic relationship Finn has that is between equals rather than a pursuit. He is not trying to earn Bubblegum's attention. He and Flame Princess are just two people who like each other and are trying to figure out how to be together in a world where her physical nature creates complications his cannot. What ends it, eventually, is a choice Finn makes out of misguided emotional need rather than genuine care for her. In the Season 5 episode, Frost and Fire, Finn, acting on a dream he is trying to make real in the most irresponsible possible way, engineers a fight between Flame Princess and the Ice King. He does this because the dream made him feel something and he is trying to recreate the feeling. The fight he engineers causes Flame Princess to lose control, to produce enough flame to crack the Earth's crust, to be confronted with the most frightening version of what she is. And she eventually realizes that Finn set it up, that he orchestrated her worst moment for his own purposes. She breaks up with him, and she is right to. And the show, to its credit, lets this be right. It does not retroactively redeem Finn's choice or soften its consequences. He did something genuinely wrong to someone he genuinely cares about. Out of emotional need he was not being honest with himself about, and the consequence is the loss of the relationship. He learns from this. The lesson is expensive, and it stays paid. Flame Princess goes on to rule the Fire Kingdom, depose her father, and become a genuinely effective ruler whose approach to governance is shaped by everything she learned in the circumstances of her upbringing, both what she learned to do and what she learned not to do. She is not a prominent presence in the show's later seasons, but she is present, and her presence is that of someone who found her way to something good through circumstances that were not arranged in her favor. Lady Rainicorn brings her own quiet depth to the show. Her backstory, she and her parents survived a period of persecution by dogs, and Jake's species and her species have a complicated history that both of them have chosen to step outside of through their relationship, is one of the show's unemphasized but present pieces of world building. The land of O, for all its sweetness, has its histories of conflict and its unresolved tensions between different communities. And Lady Rainicorn's family history is one of the ways the show acknowledges this without making it the center of any particular episode. Her children with Jake are each distinct presences in the show. Kim Kil-won's episode in which he attempts to teach his father responsibility by acquiring the treehouse and essentially putting it under new management is one of the show's funniest and also one of its most specific. He loves Jake the way children sometimes love difficult parents, profoundly, and with a specific mix of admiration and frustration that comes from seeing the parent clearly without being able to stop loving what you see. His discipline and his business acumen are real and come from genuine capability, not from being the opposite of Jake. He is Jake's child, fully, in ways that his surface presentation sometimes obscures. Charlie's psychic abilities put her in an interesting position. Relative to the rest of her family, she can see things they cannot, knows things they do not, experiences time differently because of the way her abilities interact with the flow of information available to her. The show does not explore this as fully as it might, but what it does explore is the genuine sweetness of her relationship with her father, and the ease with which she inhabits the strangeness of her own nature. TV, whose name suggests something about how he was produced, or perhaps just about what he seems most invested in, is consistently played as someone whose relationship with television and passivity is more cover than character. He is actually watching. He is actually paying attention. The sedentary presentation is not the absence of engagement, but a different form of it, the form that processes rather than acts. Viola, the artist. Jake Jr., tiny and fierce. The five of them form a specific portrait of what it means to produce children as a being whose powers are transmissible. Jake's shape-shifting has come through in different forms in each of them, expressed differently by their different personalities and different heritages, producing five distinct and interesting people from the union of two very specific individuals. The Huntress Wizard, who appears in later seasons as a significant romantic interest for Finn, brings a character type the show had not fully explored, someone who does not want what Finn wants from the interaction. She is a wizard who has devoted herself to her craft in a specific way that leaves no room for romantic entanglement, not out of coldness, but out of clarity about what she is doing and what it requires. Her relationship with Finn is one of the show's most mature two people who are attracted to each other, who care about each other, and who ultimately choose not to pursue what they feel because the pursuit would cost something that matters more than the feeling. This is not a sad ending for either of them. It is an honest one. Not every connection becomes a relationship. Not every genuine feeling produces an obligation to act on it. Huntress Wizard knows what she values most clearly and cleanly, and the show respects this clarity rather than treating it as a problem to be resolved. Susan Strong, who is revealed to be the original Susan, the person whose identity Princess Bubblegum gave to a fish creature in an ill-considered experiment many centuries earlier, the person who has been living without the full context of who she is, comes and goes across several seasons, and ultimately finds her way back to her real identity and a genuine sense of agency and self-determination. Her arc is about reclamation, about the specific work of recovering from having had your identity taken by someone who thought they were helping. She is one of the characters whose difficulty is directly caused by Bubblegum's well-intentioned overreach, and her eventual resolution is one of the show's more direct reckonings with the consequences of that overreach. Tree Trunks and Mr. Pig, Sweet Pea's adoptive parents, are exactly what they appear to be and also more. Tree Trunks is an elderly elephant who makes apple pies and has a genuinely adventurous spirit that is somewhat at odds with her presentation, and Mr. Pig is her devoted partner who clearly adores both her and the enormous child they are raising together. Their raising of Sweet Pea, their willingness to parent the physical vessel of the cosmic principle of extinction with warmth and pie and ordinary domestic affection, is the show's most quietly radical act of love. They do not know what Sweet Pea is, or they suspect but do not let it change what they are to him. He is their child. That is the whole of it. Whatever he was before, he is their child now. The Magic Man, Normal Man, King Man, one of the show's longest-running background characters and one whose redemption arc is handled with the same kind of patience that the show applies to all of its most complicated characters. Magic Man was terrible because he was in grief, and the grief had warped into something that he expressed as cruelty and chaos, and underneath the cruelty and chaos was the specific, precise, still-open wound of losing Margles to Golb. He could not fix it. He could not unknow it. He could not stop carrying it. So he became impossible, because being impossible was the only way he could manage. His eventual healing, his movement from Magic Man to Normal Man to King Man, the progressive reclamation of stability and purpose across his arc, is not dramatic. It is not the result of a single catalytic event or a conversation that resolves everything. It is the slow work of years, the gradual re-engagement with the world, the tentative construction of a reason to be present. He gets there, eventually, in the way that people who have been devastated by loss sometimes get there, by finding something worth doing and doing it, and watching the doing accumulate into something that functions like a life. Peppermint Butler's full story is one the show gestures at more than it tells. What is shown is interesting enough. A candy being with access to dark magic, knowledge of demonic realms, the acquaintance of the Lord of Evil, a past that involves experiences considerably more intense than candy serving would typically require. The show trusts that the audience can hold the mystery of Peppermint Butler, can accept that there is someone standing at Bubblegum's shoulder who contains depths that the show has not yet fully sounded without needing everything explained. His eventual ascension to ruler of the Candy Kingdom is the payoff of this long game of characterization through restraint. He was there the whole time. He was always more than he appeared. And eventually, the moment arrived when he was the one with the capacity and the context to lead. And he did. Extended Deep Dive Section 10. Fan Theories, Open Questions, and What Adventure Time Left Deliberately Unanswered. Expanded. A show this rich in its mythology and this restrained in its explicit explanations inevitably produces an enormous body of fan analysis theories about what was implied, frameworks for understanding what was left ambiguous, debates about the meaning of specific moments and the significance of specific choices. Some of these theories are clearly supported by the text. Some are extrapolations. Some are the kind of thing that the show's creators have answered directly, and some are the kind of thing they have indicated will never be fully addressed, because the ambiguity is part of the point. The question of what Finn's biological mother actually was is one the show leaves substantially open. His father, Martin Mertens, is explained, eventually, in some detail. His mother is given only the most basic characterization a woman Martin knew at some point, a relationship that did not develop into the kind of thing that requires ongoing commitment. Given Finn's status as the last human boy in Ooh, and given the enormous time and distance between the Mushroom War and his birth, the circumstances of his parents' existence are inherently unusual. The show acknowledges this without fully explaining it. Some fans have developed theories about his mother's identity based on the limited visual information available. None of these theories are confirmed. The nature of the Enchiridion is another area of deliberate ambiguity. The ancient book of heroes that appears across multiple seasons is simultaneously a holy text, a practical guide, and, in its modified form, the key to opening the time room and reaching Prismo. Its origin is tied to the deep history of the hero tradition in Ooh, the idea that there is a line of heroes, a tradition that has been maintained across centuries, each great hero doing their part and passing the tradition forward. The Enchiridion is that tradition's most ancient document. Who wrote it originally? When? Under what circumstances? These questions are gestured at but never fully answered. The relationship between Jake's alien shape-shifting heritage and the broader cosmological architecture of the show is another area of rich speculation. Warren Ampersand is from somewhere outside the normal context of O, possibly outside the normal context of Earth, certainly from somewhere that produces beings of tremendous shape-shifting capability. The show never explains where Warren comes from, what his species is like in general, whether there are others, what the society that produced him looks like. He is simply an alien, from somewhere alien, and the specifics of that somewhere are left to imagination. The question of what Golbetty will do now or is doing, in whatever dimension it inhabits after departing Ooh, is completely open. A chaos entity merged with a human woman who loved one specific person with enough totality to sacrifice herself for him. What does that produce? The show gives you Golbetty's departure and leaves everything after that to speculation. The Fiona and Cake spinoff suggests Golbetty remains a factor in the multiverse's larger dynamics, but the specifics are unresolved. What happened to the Farm World timeline after the events of Finn the Human and Jake the Dog? The timeline was created by the collision of the Lich's wish and Finn's counterwish, and it was not erased by the resolution. Both it and the original timeline continued to exist as parallel branches of the multiverse. Farmworld has its own story continuing somewhere. Farmworld Finn, who spent some time as a version of the Lich, after his contact with the Mushroom Bomb's fallout transformed him, was restored when Prismo arranged the resolution. Farmworld Marceline, elderly and powerful, is somewhere in that timeline. What became of them in the years after the crisis is a story the show did not tell. The Citadel, the prison outside space-time where the universe's greatest criminals are held, was partially destroyed in the Season 6 episodes that follow Finn the Human. The destruction of the Citadel released an unknown number of its prisoners into the universe. Who those prisoners were, what they have done since their release, how the damage to the Citadel has been managed or not managed, all open questions. The nature of the Dead Worlds is elaborated in Together Again, but not fully explained. There are multiple afterlife dimensions, each with different qualities, each housing different kinds of souls. The system has a hierarchy, life and death, as governing principles, the new death as a subsequent ruler after the original death's departure. What are all the other dead worlds? Who goes where and why? The show suggests a logic without fully articulating it. Shermie and Beth's relationship to Finn and Jake's reincarnation cycle is the most deliberately teased open question of the series. The visual and structural similarities are strong enough to be clearly intentional. Shermie has Finn's energy and Beth has Jake's heritage. But the show never confirms this. It leaves the suggestion as a suggestion, the parallel as a parallel, trusting the audience to notice it and feel what it implies without requiring the confirmation. The most significant open question, perhaps, is about what the return of humanity to Ooh will produce. In the finale's closing moments, Finn watches the boats arrive, more humans, a whole population of them, coming back to a world that has developed for 1,000 years in their absence, a world full of candy people and ice things and vampire queens and flame kingdoms, and all the extraordinary strangeness that grew from the ruins of what they built and destroyed. What happens when these two worlds make contact? How do the communities interact? What conflicts and what collaborations emerge from the reunion of humanity with the world it inadvertently produced? These are questions the show leaves genuinely open because they are the questions that its world would continue to generate. The story does not end because the world does not end. It continues to produce events and conflicts and connections and small, beautiful, ordinary moments and large, catastrophic, exceptional ones. And somewhere in that ongoing world, BMO is on its mountain being the king of something. And the wind is blowing through the treehouse that grew from Fern's seedling, and the candy is still sweet, and the music is still going. Adventure Time chose to end on a beginning. Not a resolution, but a horizon. Not an answer, but the next question, offered to the future, to whoever is watching, to Shermie and Beth, and whoever comes after them. The ending, in this sense, is not really an ending. It is an invitation, a final word before sleep comes and takes you. Adventure Time was a show that understood something that most entertainment aimed at its audience does not trust its audience to understand. That the world is complicated and sad and beautiful simultaneously, and that the sadness does not cancel the beauty, and that the beauty does not erase the sadness, and that learning to hold both at once is one of the most important things anyone ever learns to do. It taught this through Marceline, who has carried 1,000 years of loss and is still playing music. Through Simon, who spent 1,000 years as someone he was not and is still, underneath it all, himself. Through Princess Bubblegum, who built something enormous from loneliness and kept building it even as she got parts of the building wrong. Through Finn, who is the same soul he has always been, choosing the same things in the same direction, across comets and butterflies and one-armed thieves and teenage boys with swords and adventures in the post-apocalyptic ruins of a world that tried its hardest to end. Through Jake, most of all. Through Jake, who knew from the beginning or arrived at knowing very early that the important thing was the specific warmth of the specific moment you were in, the specific people around you, the specific, ordinary, extraordinary fact of being alive and present and here. We should all be so wise. We should all keep the pickles fresh. Sleep well. Complete script end. One more thing on why any of this matters. There is a reason that Adventure Time, a cartoon that aired on a children's television network at irregular hours for 8 years, accumulated the audience it accumulated. Not just children, adults. People who had grown up and moved on from cartoons and came back for this one because it was doing something that drew them back. Critics who normally do not spend time on animated programming, making space to talk about what the show was achieving. Fan communities that spent years building the kind of careful, detailed analysis of a text that is usually reserved for literature or film. The reason is not the mythology, as rich as it is. The mythology is the vehicle. The reason is what the mythology carries. Adventure Time is a show about how to be a person in a world that is larger than you and has been here longer than you and will continue after you are gone. It is a show about how to love people across the specific distances of time, of nature, of circumstance that exist between any two beings who are trying to understand each other. It is a show about how to build things worth protecting and how to protect them without becoming the worst version of the thing you are protecting against. It is a show about how to hold loss and joy simultaneously without letting either one cancel the other. It is also a show about a boy with a sword and a dog who can stretch into a car, and those things are also real and also matter. The best stories are both things at once, specific enough to feel true and large enough to contain more than their specific parts. Adventure Time is both of those things. It is Finn and Jake and Bubblegum and Marceline and Simon and the Ice King and Prismo and BMO and Sweet Pea and the Candy Kingdom and the Mushroom War and Golb and the Waving Snail and the Pickles and the songs, and it is also something that all of those specific things are pointing at, something that does not have a direct name but that you can feel when you have spent enough time in the world of the show. Something like, it matters, all of it. The small things and the enormous things and the ordinary daily accumulation of existing in a world with other people who are also existing in it. It matters. Keep going, keep building, keep the music going. Keep the warmth lit. The candy grows in the ruins. It always does. And we are still here, still watching, still finding something worth staying up for. Subscribe and sleep well. And thank you for being here.